Good evening, and welcome to, good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. I read like this, I guess, all night. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, and welcome to the City of Roswell Mayor and City Council meeting for May 23rd, 2022. I am Mayor Kurt Wilson. I'd like to acknowledge the council members present: Councilmember Christine Hall, Councilmember Lee Hills, Councilmember William Mortland, Councilmember Michael Palermo, Councilmember Peter Vanstrom. For the record, Councilmember Marcelo Zapata has an excused absence. The City Council voted to give Marcelo Zapata a medical leave of absence on January 24th of 2022. I will now turn it over to our City Administrator, Randy Knighton, to explain how the meeting is run. Mr. Knighton.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. In accordance with Section Chapter 3.70 of the City Code, the City Council shall hold regular public meetings. The purpose of City Council meetings are for the public to participate and speak on agenda items which constitute formal decisions by the elected body. These items are listed on the published agenda, which can be accessed via the city website prior to the meeting. This is a public meeting, and some items require a formal public hearing. A significant and important component of City Council meetings are to hear directly from citizens on the items listed on the agenda. Public comments or questions are essential for Mayor and Council to incorporate as they contemplate each decision. Citizens are at the top of the organizational chart, and therefore it is imperative for the Mayor and Council to hear from citizens in these meetings. If you would like to speak on an item, we ask that you are a Roswell resident and fill out a comment card, which are located in the back of the room and at the podium, in order to ensure an accurate record of the meeting. And of course, we ask that everyone observe the principles of mutual respect and display the appropriate demeanor during the course of the meeting this evening, which should be reflective of this great community. The mayor is the presiding officer of the meeting and will assure that orderly exchange of comments, questions, and discussion leading to decision making by the elected body. I would encourage that those in attendance in the viewing audience visit the city website for meetings, events, and departmental information. We also encourage everyone to review and participate in the various activities and offerings in the city. There are a number of events scheduled coming up in the city of Roswell, which promote community, physical activity, and leisure as we make Roswell the #1 family community in America. Thank you. Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. And just to buttress Mr. Knighton's comments, obviously, if you have a public comment, we do ask that you fill out a yellow comment card. I will ask you your name and where you're from, what city, obviously, your address here in Roswell. And if you're uncomfortable, because I know public speaking can sometimes be very intimidating, if you're uncomfortable coming up to the podium, just raise your hand towards me, and I will bring a microphone forward to you so you can speak from where you sit. So at this time, thank you, I'd like to call Dory Griggs, the City of Roswell Fire Department chaplain, to the front for the invocation and moment of silence.
Please join me. Holy One, we ask that you guide the mayor, the members of our city council, the City of Roswell staff, and our citizens in their work here tonight. Keep their focus on our community and the actions that would best serve the interests of all our residents. Where there are differing opinions, help them to move forward with mutual respect and forbearance. Be with our elected leaders in their decisions tonight. Give them the ability to develop responsible plans for our community, the strength to make the difficult decisions, and the empathy to consider the needs of all residents, and the wisdom to know when to move on in a spirit of collaboration for the benefit of all of Roswell. All these things we humbly pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chaplain Griggs. I would like to call Richard Spencer, who served in the Army and is a member of the Roswell Rotary Club, to lead us in the pledge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Please join me as we pledge allegiance to the flag of our great nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Next on the agenda is the mayor's report. I'd like to call Corporal Olin M. Head forward for the proclamation. Proclamation, Office of the Mayor. Corporal Olin M. Head, esteemed veteran of Roswell. Whereas Olin M. Head enlisted in the United States Army at the age of 18 upon completion from high school, and subsequently was assigned to 16 weeks of boot camp training at Fort Rucker, Alabama. Upon completion of basic training, Olin volunteered for parachute jump school at Fort Benning in Columbus, Georgia, and completed 32 jumps while in school. Olin was transferred to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division until his 3-year enlistment was completed. Olin was awarded the United States Army the following medals: Good Conduct, National Defense, and Parachute Badge. And whereas paratroopers are a unique division of the United States Army, this division is considered one of the 3 types of forced entry for entering a war. The other 2 are by land and by water. The ability of an air assault is to enter the battlefield from any location, and it allows paratroopers to evade fortifications that guard from attack from a specific direction. The Army's 82nd Airborne is an elite division that can rapidly deploy in an hour's notice. The soldiers of the 82nd are able to conduct forcible entry parachute assaults as well as other key military operations. This division is based out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and the 82nd Airborne soldiers are recognized by their Marine Berets and AA arm patches. This unit has been involved in virtually every United States military conflict since World War I. And whereas upon retirement, Olin has volunteered in Atlanta to work in the soup kitchen, feeding the homeless and those in need, and raising funds for various charities, and has also volunteered to deliver flowers to the sick on Sundays at St. David's Episcopal Church. And whereas we remember the strength of our community and nation is in our collective bond to a spirit of service, and that there is no higher calling than those who have served in the United States Armed Forces. Now, therefore, I, Kurt M. Wilson, Mayor of the City of Roswell, do hereby name Corporal Olin M. Head, an esteemed veteran of Roswell, and call upon all our citizens to recognize his outstanding service to his country and our community. Thank you, sir.
I thank the citizens of Roswell. I thank the citizens of the United States. I was proud to serve as an 82nd Airborne paratrooper. God bless America.
So we used to, as Olin probably knows, everybody that's in the Army sings a dinghy all the time, right? I want to be an airborne ranger, right? The 82nd Airborne is the elite of the elite, and the proclamation does not give justice to the type of soldier that you were. So thank you so much for your service. I'd like to ask the City Council to come down and join me, and ask Owen's family also to be here. Absolutely.
We need to come this way? No, come, shimmy to your left. Okay, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
You've arrived.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Olin is a very young 89 years of age. The next item on the mayor's report is the presentation by the 2022 Roswell Memorial Day Committee and Roswell Rotary Club. I invite David Young to come forward.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is David Young, and I'm the chairman of the Roswell Memorial Day Committee. And it's quite obvious, the first thing I should do is thank Corporal Olin Head for his service to our country. And we're looking for someone to parachute into our ceremony on Monday. What do you think? I think he can still do it.
Absolutely.
Maybe next year. We come annually to thank council and the mayor and the city for our obvious partnership for the past 22 years for this important ceremony. And Monday will mark our 23rd annual ceremony for Memorial Day on these grounds. And what's special this year is that we're memorializing 2 new markers in addition to our Faces of War existing memorial, honoring both Blue Star and Gold Star families for those who have served, are serving presently, and those who have obviously lost one in service. So I want to thank especially the cooperation that we get from the Roswell Parks and Recreation, specifically Jeff Leatherman, Rusty Pruitt, Chris Ward, and Jonathan King for their collaboration. We couldn't do it without them, and we couldn't do it without the city's partnership. We just simply could not do it. So we want to thank you from our committee, from the Roswell Rotary Club, and we want to invite the entire city and their friends out to this important ceremony on Monday. Start time is 11. The grounds open at 10. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. And just to echo David's comments, it is an amazing ceremony. It is next Monday, Memorial Day, 11 a.m. right here at City Hall grounds. I invite the entire community to come out. You will not regret being a part of this. And probably the most exciting part about the day is that Mayor Pro Tem Mike Palermo will be the headline speaker, so it will be momentous words that nobody wants to miss. The next item on the mayor's report is the approval of a resolution to activate a new Roswell Development Authority and dissolve all prior development authorities in the city of Roswell, not including the existing Downtown Development Authority. Does council, Mr. Vanstrom, would you like to lead it off the council with your comments, please, sir?
Yeah, thank you very much. We're excited to have the Roswell Development Authority forming. Just wanted to clarify what their duties are and also how they will work in conjunction with the Downtown Development Authority real quickly. The RDA will facilitate trade, commerce, and industry and employment opportunities in the city of Roswell. They'll lead interaction with the private sector for both economic development and economic redevelopment. This doesn't mean that we're dissolving the Downtown Development Authority. We're actually adding to cover the entire city with a development authority. The Downtown Development Authority is in charge of the central business district, as all downtown development authorities are, and they will remain so. And I having an opportunity to make a plug, they're doing a fabulous job. We've got some really exciting things on the horizon in the central business district that you'll be hearing about. So simply put, the new Roswell Development Authority is a huge and long overdue economic engine for the city of Roswell. Our main focus initially will be East Roswell and the Highway 9 corridor. We're looking forward to getting going. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. Any other comments? Yes, sir. Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. I just want to really thank Councilman Vanstrom for really just looking into this and really having such a focus on economic development and specifically for starters really with the east side of Roswell. I think this will be a great opportunity to make sure that we're really focused on bringing in really a destination and some great economic activity that all the residents of both the east side of Roswell and all of Roswell can certainly enjoy and be proud of. So thank you, Councilman Vanstrom.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Other comments from council? This is, I will tell you, it's exciting. This is an exciting thing that's happening, creating the city development authority. As Peter alluded to, the DDA, the Downtown Development Authority, has several things underway and is doing an excellent job. And Peter, as the economic liaison from the city council, is working extremely intensely with the DDA and will be working extremely intensely with the city's new development authority. This is a much-needed action and will help facilitate some real economic action in our city. And as Peter said, we'll be focused on the corridors and the east side of our city. So thank you so much, Peter. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Vanstrom. All those in favor of the activating the new Roswell Development Authority, please raise your hands. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much. Just to let you know, we'll be appointing the members to the Roswell Development Authority next week at the special called Mayor and Council meeting on Tuesday, May 31st. That meeting is at 6:30 p.m. with the open forum following at 7 p.m. Before we go to the approval of the first reading of the FY 2023 budget, I have two items that I'd like to bring up first on the mayor's report. The first, it is with great sadness that I acknowledge that Dung Liu, supervisor for the facilities division, unexpectedly passed away on Saturday, May 21st. Dung served the city for almost 40 years and was the epitome of a team player. Dung loved working for the city and was a shining light for our Recs and Parks Department. Dung leaves behind his wife, Mai, and a whole host of friends and family. Please keep Dung's family, friends, co-workers in your thoughts and prayers. And as we find out more about services for Dung, we will put him on the city website to let all know to grieve in his absence. The second item I'd like to bring up before the first reading of the budget is regarding the recycling center. Beginning Friday, May 27th, the American Kidney Fund will have a donation trailer for household goods and clothing at the Roswell Recycling Center for Roswell residents. This is exciting, so I know many of you struggle sometimes when you're cleaning out your garage or your house, and you got a lot of things that you want to donate. And beginning Friday, May 27th, come to the recycling center and go to the American Kidney Fund trailer, and there will be a place and a home for you to take your stuff that you want to donate. I also want to remind you that the recycling center is a great place for you to take glass, antifreeze, motor and vegetable oil, cell phones and electronics, metal and metal items like grills and lawnmowers. Visit roswellgov.com for information and hours. Also, if you have large items that do not fit in your curbside garbage containers, please go to our transfer station, and it's available from 8 to 4 Monday through Friday for Roswell residents. The final item on the mayor's report is the approval of the FY 2023 budget for the city of Roswell, Georgia, in the amount of $172,884,050. City Attorney Davidson, would you please read the ordinance?
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ordinance adopting a budget for fiscal year 2023 for each fund of the city of Roswell, Georgia, pursuant to Article 6, Chapter 6 of the Charter of the City, beginning July 1st, 2022, and ending June 30th, 2023, appropriating the amount shown in each budget as expenditures, adopting the item of anticipated funding sources, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures from exceeding actual funding sources, and amending the Code of Ordinances to effectuate such adoption. Now therefore, the mayor and council of the city of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following ordinance. The city of Roswell, Georgia hereby adopts an expenditure budget for fiscal year 2023, said budget being described below and shown on Schedule A for each fund of the city of Roswell, Georgia. The general fund, $95,195,931. ARPA, $8,934,100. Confiscated assets fund, $25,000. E911 fund, $3,121,005. Grant fund, $1,055,829. Impact fees fund, $1,534,499. Hotel motel fund, $1,850,700. Auto rental excise tax fund, $425,000. Lita Thompson fund, $67,019. Special events fund, $402,498. Capital projects, $13,774,834. Bond fund, debt service, $1,685,100. Water and sewer fund, $4,533,487. Stormwater utility fund, $4,293,400. Solid waste fund, $13,746,107. Recreation participation fund, $6,938,463. Workers' compensation fund, $857,885. Group health insurance fund, $10,442,536. Risk management fund, $1,671,391. Fleet services fund, $2,329,216. And scholarship endowment fund, $50,000, for a total of $172,884,050. Any increase or decrease in appropriations or revenue of any fund or from any department, the establishment of new capital projects or the establishment of new grant projects, other than those exceptions provided for herein, shall require approval of the mayor and city council. A millage rate of 4.718 mils is estimated as part of the proposed budget. The millage rate has a component of 4.618 mils for the general fund operating and capital improvements budget, and a component of 0.100 mils for servicing bonded indebtedness. The millage rate shall be adopted by mayor and council at a later date, but prior to the issuance of tax bills for tax year 2022. This budget fixes the number of budgeted full-time positions of the city at 664. Mayor and council adopt a capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2023 through 2027 as attached here to and incorporated herein as Schedule B. Mayor and council further approve reappropriation into fiscal year 2023 of fiscal year 2022 unspent funding in the general fund in order to establish a general fund fuel and utility contingency in an amount not to exceed $250,000. Mayor and council further approve the reappropriation into fiscal year 2023 of fiscal year 2022 unspent funding in the general fund in order to establish a general fund operating contingency in an amount not to exceed $250,000. The mayor and council further approve reappropriation into the fiscal year 2023 of fiscal year 2022 unspent funding in the general fund in order to establish a general fund grant match contingency in the amount not to exceed $100,000. Mayor and council further approve reappropriation of all approved capital projects, grant revenue, grant funding, as well as capital project funding contingency funding that is unspent or uncollected and available as of June 30th, 2022, as shown in Schedule B. Mayor and council further approve reappropriation into fiscal year 2023, fiscal year 2022 unspent funding for employee wellness program, fiscal year 2022 unspent funding for city's education assistance program, fiscal year 2022 unspent funding for Roswell University, fiscal year 2022 unspent funding for the police school zone safety project, fiscal year 2022 unspent funding for legal services, and fiscal year 2022 unspent funding for the election. Mayor and council further approve the reappropriation into fiscal year 2023 of unspent fiscal year 2022 approved funding for the Roswell Historic Society for the purpose of cemetery maintenance and improvements. Mayor and council further approve reappropriation into fiscal year 2023 of unspent fiscal year 2022 approved funding and confiscated assets fund. The city administrator and his or her designee may promulgate all necessary internal rules, regulations, and policies to ensure that this budget ordinance is followed. And if approved, this would be the first reading.
City Attorney Davidson, would you please read that again for everybody's benefit?
Let me get some water.
All right, Lynn Williams, our budget manager, would you please come forward for the presentation of first reading of the budget? Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, David.
I'm going to let Ryan do the first part.
We're going to tag team tonight. So.
All right, well, welcome, Ryan.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. We have a brief presentation for you to review some of the information that was discussed at the May 9th Mayor and Council meeting, as well as some additional information regarding a few of the other components of the proposed budget for FY 2023. Before we get started, just to recap the process, the budget was proposed and presented to you all on May 9th. This is our first budget reading and public hearing, and we'll have our second and final reading of the 23 budget on June 13th at a mayor and council meeting starting at 7 p.m. Real quickly, our agenda for this evening, we're going to give you a brief discussion of the base budget, an all-fund summary. We're going to review some of the revenue and expenditure assumptions included in the budget, an overview of the general fund, a quick recap of the budget ordinance, and a review of the add and delete proposals, as well as some next steps. So just to recap the proposed budget highlights that we talked about at the first meeting back on May 9th, the proposed budget is balanced. The 100-day plan and strategic plan priorities are funded, including the best-in-class police pay plan, as well as the beginning of a transition to the full-time fire department. Additionally, the River Parks plan, Ace Sand Phase 1 and 2 are funded, as well as East Roswell Park improvements totaling $2.5 million. Before we move on, we wanted to provide a little bit of a discussion on the development of our base budget and how that works. The annual budget process begins in January with budget staff reviewing the base budget. The base budget basically reflects the cost of providing currently approved programs and services. Once that base budget review is completed, then we consider new funding requests, whether that be operating or capital funding. Those are considered, eventually make their way to the city administrator and then to the mayor for the final decision on whether to include those in the proposed budget. So the proposed budget, one way of thinking about it is that it includes the base budget for current services as well as any new funding requests. We wanted to go over with you all real briefly the basic components of what makes up the base budget. Basically that includes personnel expenses, fixed operating expenses, and discretionary operating expenses. And I'll kind of go over those real quickly individually. First would be our personnel expenses. These make up about 65% of the budget, and these expenses are zero-based annually, and they are controlled by the budget staff. So those are calculated on an annual basis. This includes things like salaries and benefits, associated benefits, retirement, and things like that. Our fixed operating expenses, that makes up about 22% of the overall base budget. And those are also zero-based annually, and those are also controlled by our budget staff. This includes line items like utilities, gasoline and oil, fleet rate related to the city's fleet, workers' compensation, risk and liability expenses, as well as indirect costs, debt payments, and transfers. And then finally, we have our discretionary operating expenses. These make up about 13% of the budget. These are expenses that can be adjusted by departments. Departments are allowed to adjust some of these operating line items during the budget process, but all adjustments must net out to zero. Any increase in that total base amount is submitted as a new operating request for mayor and council consideration. Departments are allowed to make temporary transfers between line items during the fiscal year, but those are temporary and go back to their original place as originally allocated. So this includes expenses like professional services, repairs and maintenance, supplies, education and training, advertising, and some other discretionary accounts. So thinking about the base budget, we also wanted to review with you all a list of overall changes that were made in the base budget as we reviewed those expenses, recalculated what was needed for the upcoming year. And so basically, if you start with the approved budget from FY 2022, we're giving you here individual lines that show you what changes were made in the base budget as we got to the FY 23 budget. So first off would be salary adjustments based on current roster and full year compensation adjustment. That was a little over $2 million, and that basically includes the full year impact of the compensation study that was approved in a previous year, as well as the full year impact of the merit increase that was approved for FY 2022. Additionally, utilities, gasoline, and oil are expenses based on our review. There is an increase of $418,000. Budgeted vacancy savings. This is primarily related to the police department and the fact that they've been able to fill a lot of their vacancies, so we needed to reduce our budgeted vacancy savings. So this resulted in an increase to the budget of about $266,000. Our defined contribution and defined benefit retirement plans, both of those had increases, totaling a little over about $450,000. The general fund transfer to the E911 fund. So in FY 2022 was the first year that the general fund began supporting, to some degree, the E911 fund. And that is increasing this year by $160,000 for a total transfer from the general fund to the E911 fund of $450,000. Our fire apparatus lease adjustments, there was an increase of $121,000, and that was because due to a new truck being purchased that was approved by a prior council. Fleet rate and lease adjustments, there was an increase of $67,000. Group health adjustment of $24,000. The general fund support of the Recreation Participation Fund is a net cost of about $350,000. That increased by $17,000. Department adjustments, this was primarily a net increase related to the increased costs for the North Fulton Regional Radio Authority. That was almost $17,000. Downtown parking lot lease and maintenance adjustments, an increase of $1,500. And then we had a series of decreases. So recurring amounts related to the mid-year budget was a net decrease of $22,000. Workers' compensation contribution adjustment, a decrease of $34,000. IT equipment lease adjustment was a decrease of $121,000. The risk and liability adjustment was a decrease in the general fund of $167,000. Bank fees and merchant fees charges adjustment, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a moment, but this was a decrease of $260,000. One-time costs removed, this is related to our partner organization, so this was prior to what you all, what's up for consideration in the proposed budget. That was a reduction of $386,000. Recreation, land, and other lease adjustments, and we'll talk a little bit more about this one in a few moments, was a decrease of $714,000. And then finally, removing the capital that was approved in FY22 was a decrease of $2.1 million. So all of those changes combined had a net decrease to our base budget for FY 2023 of $247,000. So if you see on this slide, our FY 22 approved budget was 82.3. The base adjustments was a net decrease of 247, so that gave us an FY 23 base budget of a little over $82 million. I also wanted to mention some other citywide cost-saving measures that are impacting the annual budget. These are things that have been worked through over the last few months. The first one listed here are telecommunication savings within our IT department. That was work performed by our IT department and resulted in a savings to the city of about $663,000. Additionally, there was revenue that is planned to be realized from a fleet resale plan. Basically, the city being able to take advantage of the used car market and being able to actually make some revenue by selling and rebuying some of our leased vehicles results in additional revenue, planned revenue of $667,000. Recently, our risk and liability insurance coverage was renegotiated and resulted in premium savings of about $250,000. And there are other line item savings that we'll go over in detail in just a few moments that resulted in a decrease of $691,000. So total of all these cost-saving measures resulted in a decrease to the city of about a little over $2.2 million. Additionally, finance and the budget staff and all departments will be working in the coming months on the full implementation of priority-based budgeting and zero-based budgeting, and we anticipate additional savings to come as we prepare for the FY 2024 budget. So moving on, I just want to give you another recap of the all-fund summary. This is something we talked about at the May 9th meeting. Across all of our city funds, we have a total source of funds, so all of our revenue sources or the use of reserves of $194.4 million. You can see that the bulk of that comes from our property taxes, charges for service, and our sales tax. This slide gives you a 10-year history of our property tax revenue, and as you can see in the proposed budget, we're anticipating revenue of about $31.8 million. That's across all funds. And currently, the proposed budget includes an estimated millage rate of 4.718, which is the same as the millage rate that was adopted for FY 2022. Our sales tax revenues have grown tremendously over the last year. And you can see that two components here. One, the green bar you can see is made up of our local option sales tax revenue. That's the penny sales tax that's collected across all of Fulton County, for which the city receives a portion. The $18.5 million are the funds collected through the T-Splast sales tax, transportation, local option, special purpose local option sales tax. This slide gives you an indication of the use of funds or our expenditures across all of our funds in the city. That totals $172.8 million across all funds. You can see the bulk of that is made up of our police department, recreation and parks, and environmental public works. And then finally, for this section, we were giving you a full-time position history. So you can see in FY 2023, the proposed budget includes 664 full-time authorized positions. That's an increase from 632 in FY 22. The bulk of that increase are the 21 full-time captains that are included for the initial transition to a full-time fire department. Moving on to our next section, we wanted to get into some of the revenue and expenditure assumptions that are included in the FY 2023 budget, and we wanted to start with occupation tax. Just to provide a little bit of context, occupation tax is a tax enacted by local governments for the purpose of raising revenue to support programs and services that are provided by the city. The tax is levied on businesses and practitioners that have an office or location within the city. A lot of people know it better as a business license. And in Roswell, we use a methodology where it's assessed based upon a business's gross receipts, profitability, and number of employees. This current process has been in place in the city of Roswell since 2018, and it's also the same process that's used in the city of Milton, Johns Creek, and Sandy Springs. Our other neighboring cities, the city of Alpharetta, bases their occupation tax solely on the number of employees. When mayor and council decided to move to this new process, this was back in 2016, they adopted a resolution establishing profitability thresholds and the accompanying tax rate. And so for businesses that fall within each of these particular thresholds, this slide shows you the tax rate that applies to those particular businesses. Additionally, there's an exemption in place of $100,000 that's applied to reported gross receipts across all businesses. Aside from that tax rate, there are a few other fees that apply. There's a per employee fee, 1 to 99 employees of a business. If a business with 1 to 99 employees pays $0 per employee, a business with 100 or more employees pays $12 per employee. Additionally, we have an administrative fee of $100, a regulatory fee that's paid by most commercial businesses of $50, and that's to cover the costs associated with the inspection of those businesses that's performed by our fire department. And then finally, there's a practitioners of professions fee. This is in lieu of the gross receipts fee, and there are certain business types allowed by state law. They can choose whether to pay by gross receipts or a flat fee of $400 per practitioner. We were asked to go and look at, our current tax structure and how that compares to others in our region. And what we found is that the current Roswell tax rates are among the lowest in the region. The FY 2023 budget increases those tax rates to make them more comparable to other North Fulton cities. So this table gives you an idea of the proposed changes to the current tax rates. Across all of these different classes, you can see the current tax rate. For example, Class A is proposed to increase from 0.01% to 0.07% and on down through Class G. Other changes that are included in the proposed budget are that the exemption of $100,000 would only apply to businesses reporting $100,000 in gross receipts or less. Additionally, the proposed budget assumes a new cap on occupation tax. That would cap occupation tax paid by a business at no more than $85,000. We wanted to provide some examples of what these changes in the tax rates look like to example businesses and how that compares to some of our neighboring cities. So what you see, I'll kind of walk you through this chart. On the left side of the chart, we've given you some examples of some of the most common NAICS or business types in the city of Roswell. And we've given you kind of an average gross receipts number, what tax class that business falls into, and the first column shows you what the current tax rate is. The next section goes into what the proposed tax rate is, and then we provided a comparison to what that business type would pay in our neighboring cities of Milton, Johns Creek, and Sandy Springs. So to go through a couple of these as examples, a new car dealership with an estimated or example gross receipts of about $83 million currently pays a tax rate of 0.02%, results in a tax of $16,580. That would go to 0.09%, a tax of $74,700. If you look at that across the other cities, that would be higher than Milton and Johns Creek, but would still be lower than the city of Sandy Springs. And so what you'll see, I haven't explained this, the colors that you see on the chart here, the green shows the lowest city for each of these business types, and the red shows the highest city tax rate among the other cities. So what you'll see if you look at the Roswell proposed column, there's one category that Roswell would be the lowest, there's one category that Roswell would be the highest, but for the most part, the city of Roswell's proposed tax rate structure would fall among the other North Fulton cities. And you can see For the most part, the city of Sandy Springs would have the bulk of the higher tax rates for these particular examples that we're showing you here. These proposed changes result in an additional $4 million in general fund revenue to be invested in high-priority operating enhancements that are included in the proposed budget. In order for this to move forward, there will be a fee resolution for mayor and council consideration with all the proposed rate changes, and that will be presented at the June 13th mayor and council meeting. Moving on to some of the other assumptions included, we'll talk about utility rates. For our stormwater fees, there is a proposed rate increase for FY 2023. As an example, the Tier 2 customers, and there would be an increase of from $4.25 to $4.95 a month. That particular example would be an annual impact of about $8.40 increase. This increase is important for our Environmental Public Works Department because it does bring in more revenue, which they can then use to increase the amount of stormwater capital projects that they are able to complete and advance in the backlog of projects that they have by about 50%, a 50% increase in funding to address that. On the solid waste side, there is also proposed rate increases, 5% rate increase for residential customers and a 4% increase for commercial customers. This increase is driven primarily by the impact of the waste management, yard waste, and recycling contract escalation. Waste management, the contract is set to go in, the contract amendment is set to go into effect July 1st, 2022. And includes a $2.24 increase per resident per month. It's about a $692,000 overall impact to the solid waste fund, and additional increases are anticipated in future years. So this rate increase is meant to address the impact of that increase as well as other inflationary increases that are being seen as we looked at our 5-year forecast. Just to give you an example, our standard residential service, it would be an increase of $1.17 per month in FY 2023. That's an annual impact of about $14.04. It's going from $23.39 to $24.56. And again, all of those items that we just mentioned will be included in the fee resolution that I mentioned earlier that will be presented at the next mayor and council meeting. On the expenditure side, we also want to talk about some assumptions that are included in the budget. Currently, merchant fees associated with payments by credit card are absorbed by the city. And today, those costs of the merchant fees exceed $400,000 annually across all funds in the city. The proposed budget assumes that merchant fees will no longer be absorbed by the city, and instead will be passed to the customers that are actually paying using a credit card. More details will be discussed tomorrow at the committee meeting. The next expenditure assumption we wanted to cover includes debt repayment. The proposed budget assumes repayment of 2 loans using current year fund balance in excess of emergency reserves. This allows for, by paying off these 2 loans, it frees up annual debt service in the amount of $713,000 that can then be used to invest in other higher priority operating enhancements that are included in the proposed budget. This was discussed at the last committee meeting, and it's a separate item on tonight's agenda that we can discuss at that point. And the final expenditure assumption I wanted to get into deals with some additional line item reductions. There are additional reductions proposed for your consideration tonight. These additional reductions in line items are proposed in the amount of $691,390. The resulting budget surplus by making these reductions would provide flexibility to the mayor and council in allowing the millage rate to be reduced to the rollback rate in 2022. More details will be provided once the property tax digest values are received from Fulton County. Typically, we receive those in early July. And so at that time, we'll be able to provide you with more definite numbers, but the reductions that we're about to talk about do provide that built-in flexibility in the budget as we discuss the millage rate a few months from now. I did want to go over in detail what those additional line item reductions include, and you all also received some additional details and information that we provided today. 2 slides to kind of go over those. One, in the administration department, professional services funding within the city administrator's budget of $200,000. These are all reductions. In the police department, unspent jail or detention center funding of $100,000. Across various departments is a reduction of unspent part-time employee funding of $100,000. Across various departments, unspent education, training, and travel funding of $100,000. In the transportation department, savings associated with their contract services account as a result of recent procurement effort for landscaping. That was a reduction of $52,390. In community development, we have unspent contract services funding related to property abatement, code enforcement of $30,000. In administration, unspent professional services funding within our municipal court of $25,000. The transportation department has unspent professional services funding related to design and engineering, $20,000. Citywide, we're suggesting the elimination of the employee referral incentive program, which would have a savings of $15,000. Also citywide is unspent contract services funding for leased parking of $15,000. In administration, we're proposing a reduction of unspent professional services funding within human resources of $14,000. In our fire department, unspent supplies funding within the Office of Emergency Management of $10,000. And in citywide, we're suggesting a $10,000 decrease related to unspent employee tuition reimbursement funding. So all of these items total up to the $691,390 mentioned on the previous slide. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lynn, and she's going to provide you with an overview of the general fund as well as some highlights from the budget ordinance.
Thank you, Ryan. Hey, Lynn.
Hey. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to talk about the general fund. Let's start with the revenue. So the revenue in general fund is listed at 95.2 in the proposed budget. About a third of this comes from our property tax, 31.2 million. About a third comes from sales tax, that's 29.5, and the other third comes from business taxes, other revenues, and use of reserves. The general fund use of funds, this is by department, so you can see that the largest department here is police, recreation, administration, and fire and transportation add up to 82%. On the next slide, I will show the same 95.2 by type of funding, how we spend it. So salaries and benefits makes up 65% or 61.9 million, operating 20% or 19.1 million, and transfers and other 14.1. This is the general fund summary, and like I did on the 9th, I will go through this slide and just kind of walk everybody through it. The beginning fund balance amount is $4 million. That $4 million is above policy. So what that means is we do have a policy of general fund reserves of 25% of our operating expenses. So that $4 million was above and beyond that 25% in the FY21 financial report. The next line down is our 23 proposed revenues of 93.1. The next line down was the 2023 base budget that Ryan had mentioned earlier at 82.1 million. The next 3 lines are listed in the budget book and I described in detail on May 9th. These were the program changes of 5.1 million, partner organization requests of 645,000, and maintenance capital of 5.3. Those add up to the 11 million. On the next line for the 93.1, you would add up the 82 base plus that 11, and that gives you the 93. When you subtract the revenues minus the total operating, of 93.098. That gives you that 20,811. The next line is the resources used for one-time capital. That was about 2.1 million. And when you add that to the operating, that gives you a total proposed expenditures in general fund of 95,195,931. The amount below that as the allocated increase for general fund reserve by policy. Because we added operating expenses, we do need to increase that reserve. So the increase in the reserve went up by 1.8 for this particular set of numbers. And that left us with a general fund balance of 127,868. These numbers will be referenced again in a few slides. So I want to talk about the budget ordinance. I know David Davidson did a very good job of reading it all. But this gives us legal authority for allocation of funds. This gives us by fund and department what they can be spending. The number of full-time employees is set by that ordinance, and so for this year, it's set at 664. It set up 3 different contingencies, a fuel and utility contingency, an operating contingency, and a grant match contingency. We also reappropriate some funding from FY22 if it's unspent into FY 2023. This includes capital projects, grant funding approved by Mayor and Council, the Employee Wellness Program, the City Education Assistance Program for employees, Roswell University, legal services, the election, police, school zone safety project, Roswell Historical Society for cemetery care, and confiscated assets. So those will be carried forward from FY22 based on their unspent funds into 23. For these next couple of slides, I'm going to talk about the add-delete proposals that we've received. Mayor and Council will need to vote on these changes to implement them. This slide right here is the same information I had on slide 44, so this was the same set of numbers that I just went through. These next 2 slides will be a summary, and then I'll go into detail. So to summarize the changes that we have received, the total of the operating additions we have received is 141,730. The proposed operating deletions is the 691,390 that Ryan just went through. That would give us a decrease in general fund of 549,660. The next line down, the 7471, is the 20,000 that had been left over when we took revenues minus operating expenditures and left us with 20,000. So that 20,000 plus this 550 gives us the 570 right there. And that will be available for operating if we do these changes. On this page is the summary of the changes to capital. And I will skip over the first 2 numbers because I'll talk about it on the detail sheet. But the third number down is the reserve fund decrease because it's in parentheses. The 137 is the decrease. So we had added to our reserve based on the increases in operating. Well, when we're taking numbers back off, we do have to decrease that reserve. So this 137 relates to that decrease in reserve. So that would give us 244,472 for one-time capital. On this next page, these are the operating in detail. So in detail, the 2 operating increases additions have been added. 1 full-time project manager position in Recreation and Parks for 84,230, and increased funding for Roswell Inc. for a total of 277,500 for Roswell Inc. for the year. The next line down is the proposed deletions, and these are the additional line item reductions that Ryan just spoke about. The 691,390. which included the admin professional services, a reduction of $200,000, the unspent jail detention expenses of $100,000, the part-time expenses of $100,000, the education and training of $100,000, and then the 9 other various accounts for $191, for a total of $691,390. On this page, I will talk about the capital, and this is the one I skipped on the summary. So these 3 items were proposed as a lease purchase, and when we do a lease purchase, we get money or financing. So we would get money from the bank, and we would record the full asset, the full expense, and then we would pay down the lease as we go along. Because we are going to go ahead and let's go ahead and do these in 22, and so we are going to add all 3 of these to the end of year budget amendment that we'll be bringing to council in June. So we have removed them from 23, and we will show them in 22 and buying it using the existing addition in the additional revenue that we expected over budget in 22. And then, so the next steps after tonight, after we vote tonight, would be in June 13th at 7 p.m., the 2023 second reading and public hearing. And the proposed budget is available on the website, and hard copy is available in finance.
Thank you, Lynn. Great job, Ryan. Ryan and Lynn, I know I can't even begin to calculate the number of hours that have gone into this budget this year. Would you like to make any additional commentary before I turn over to council on the budget? You got nothing?
I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to thank all the departments for all of their hard work as well.
Does that include the police and fire?
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Lynn. Thank you, Lynn, very much. All right, I would like to turn it over to council for comments and questions about the FY 2023 budget presentation, proposed budget. Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. So definitely appreciate the all the work that staff did. I mean, that's an absolute lot of work in there, and just wanted to share my my initial thoughts. Of course, this is the first reading, and there's always the second reading as advertised. But my plan currently is to support this first reading. I'd say, you know, without a doubt, you know, I think anyone can always look at any budget, and certainly, you know, there's changes and deletes or adds that one would want to make, but I think overall, as I see it, I think what's presented here is a budget that does have a lot of advantages to it, and I think probably the best budget I'd seen in my tenure here. So even, you know, even though certainly nothing's ever perfect, I think some advantages that I see are certainly some important aspects around the fact, as discussed, regarding our fire department. You know, for the safety of the people of Roswell, for contingency planning, for really just to have the best fire department structure possible, we need some full-time firefighters, and so I think it really is an important investment, and it's a tough one. It's one that certainly takes, I think, a lot of courage, because it's been an issue that elected officials in the city of Roswell have known long before I was serving. Never mind, you know, in the discussions for the last 6.5 years, and I certainly have advocated for getting really some full-time firefighters, and so glad that this budget goes even above what I felt seemed possible in the last few years. So really glad to see that. I think from our police department and having really the best-in-class pay, I think that's just so important for the good of a community, because I'll tell you right now, you know, if we want the absolute best-in-class police officers, then we need to make sure we're paying the best-in-class. And I'll tell you, to not have the best-in-class is a lot more expensive for a community, both in hard dollar and soft dollar costs than what's in this budget. So I think there's a lot of benefits that I think are occurring for the community. And as we look to residents, the fact that this will be the first year since 2018, since calendar year 2018, where there is not going to be a tax increase for the residents of Roswell. I think to do all these important challenges, while also for the first time in 4 years to not have a tax increase for the people of Roswell, then I think that's real benefit. So of course, I will say, of course, my caveat. So I'm supporting the first reading tonight. That is with the expectation that we are able to provide a millage rate that is not a tax increase. So if the estimates become exponentially larger or different than expected with assessments, then I am going to want to challenge this council to have to come up with some later cuts, prior to that time. But right now, the way it's presented, I am supporting the first reading tonight.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. And a big shout out to Ryan, Lynn, the entire finance team, all the staff, and Mayor and my colleagues and City Administrator Randy Knighton. This has been a very robust, very strategic, very focused, very Roswell resident-centric focused budget process. It's like none other than I've seen even in my corporate life. So I'm very, very excited about it, but we got into the process in January when it started, and we have concepts of continuing with priority-based and zero-based, and I'm even more excited because we've started discussing FY24 budget already. So that's on the horizon, and I think we're going to be able to do some really, really great things that benefit the Roswell residents. I also want to say how delighted I am that we were able to present this budget, even given the inflation factors, that it was a struggle. I know it was a struggle to get the budget to where it was, and we really looked under turned every piece of paper over. So just thank you, everybody, and I know the Roswell residents are really grateful.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall, for those very kind comments. Council? Councilmember Morthland.
Just to finish up here, thank you to you both for finding the funds for the recreation and parks position. They are very, very grateful for that, and we're going to do great things with the new position. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Will. I'll make a comment, I guess, before I turn it over. It is hard to put into words how much work has gone into this budget. And it has been exemplary work, as mentioned by my colleagues, by Ryan and Lynn and their team, and by Mr. Knighton and Mr. Fisher and all the department heads. This has been an incredibly collaborative effort. Every city council member up here has been incredibly involved in this process. You probably remember we actually had a 2-day workshop not too long ago, again, kind of unprecedented from the standpoint of a budget presentation well in advance. This budget has been worked, reworked, worked, and reworked. And the exciting part about it is Ryan and Lynn and their teams have taken this on with incredible competence and have continually accepted the challenges that have been put before them. Can't say enough great things about the work that you've done on this. I think one of the things that I failed to mention that I want to mention now is that you will be seeing coming from this council and mayor and from the city staff a new presentation. You saw the first 100-day presentation from January 24th. And shortly before July the 1st, you will see a presentation for the other big agenda items that will be executed and accomplished by this council and mayor. And one of those things that was not on the 100-day plan, but will be on the latter part of the 2022 plan, is the establishment of a full-time fire department within 5 years. And this FY23 budget is year one of that, and it's established in this budget. It's a significant accomplishment. For those of you who don't know it, Roswell is the largest city in the United States of America without a full-time fire department. And so it's an amazing, we are blessed to have an incredible chief in Joe Panino and his leadership and his team. And we figured it was time that for our residents and for the long term, that this council and mayor take on the challenge of funding a full-time fire department, which is a colossal challenge. That's why it hasn't been done in the past. And so major credit to the courage of this council for being willing to take it on, and major credit again for Lynn and Ryan and their team making it happen. The second part of that is it's not often in politics that you see a campaign promise actually come to fruition. And I think one of the things that you've seen from this council is that you've seen the implementation of a best-in-class police plan as a part of this budget. And what Mike made mention of was there is not a tax increase on residents. As a matter of fact, in the budget, there's a lot of things. I could spend hours talking to you about the budget, but David, you hit me if I go past another minute. Is one of the incredible things in this budget, and thanks to Councilmember Hall and Councilmember Palermo's leadership on this, is that the millage rate was adjusted downward last year. But that doesn't mean that property taxes don't go up. So Mike and Christine were absolutely vigilant in making sure that we had enough money left over, i.e. a little bit of a surplus, so that when the adjustment is made in July, we will be able to apply that surplus so that even though the millage rate stays the same, your taxes would go up. And so what Mike and Christine did an excellent job of ensuring was that we had enough surplus in our fund balance to take care of that so that the residents' property taxes would not go up. And that, again, was thanks to their foresight. So I could talk to you about the budget for hours, literally, because there's so many great things about this budget. But with that being said, I'd like to turn it over to our Roswell residents for any public comments about it. Yes, ma'am. I don't know who you are, so you're going to have to tell us who you are and where you're from.
Refresh your memory. I'm the complicated woman. Janet Russell, longtime Roswell resident. 2 questions. Well, one is a comment, one is a question. I noticed that the funding for Roswell Inc. is $200,000 and you're going to give them $50,000 more. I want to know why you're giving them anything, since we're going to hire a full-time economic developer and we need to get rid of them. They haven't accomplished much in a long, long time, and I think since they began during the Great Recession, they were supposed to be given $167,000 one time only, and after that be fully independently, financially independent. To date, I think we've given them like $8 or $9 million, maybe $10 million. And every year, everybody complains about problems with stagnation of business development in Roswell, and yet we keep renewing them and giving them $500,000 or $250,000 or blah, 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 blah. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So rather than giving him a raise, I think we ought to start decreasing it, because we are going to hire a full-time economic developer. We've been promised that. And I think that that's a waste of money. Secondly, regarding the full-time firemen, it's interesting that you brought it up, Mr. Wilson, because I happen to have had a chat with some of the firemen the other day, because some of them I actually drove in carpool when they were young men. And I mentioned to them about this proposal, and they are not happy. And they told me, and quite frankly, I didn't know this was going to be up here tonight, that the city is not listening to the firemen at all. They might be listening, but they're not hearing. And I might suggest that before you take action, you listen to the firemen that are sitting over there every day. When I moved to Roswell, we had a full-time volunteer fire department, full-time volunteer. It's always had very low insurance rates because these guys are excellent. And they have got quite an interesting perspective that you may want to listen to carefully, since none of us would run into a burning building to save a crack addict who lit a building on fire. None of us, I can assure you. So you might want to listen to them before you start enacting a plan of going full-time and making it sound really great. Listen to the pros, because they bring a lot to the table that neither you nor I have any knowledge about, okay?
Thanks, Ms. Russell. I will, just as an aside, I'll respond just to, or answer your two questions, because I think they're very good questions. The second question on the full-time fire department, as the grandson of a fireman, back in the days when they used to be 24 on and 24 off, I have incredible respect for our firemen, and I have incredible respect for our Roswell Fire Department, and I think they do an incredible job. On June the 13th, we will hold a workshop where we will give to our residents a gap analysis that was done to look at our fire department. And what it will demonstrate is that the city is, in the most simplistic of terms, it is at times vulnerable from having a part-time fire department. Vulnerable from, and it really got exposed during COVID. And that has, you have to remember that if there was a regional event in the city of Atlanta, those respective gentlemen and ladies who work, for example, in DeKalb County or Gwinnett County or Cherokee County or wherever their place or their first place of employment as a fireman, and Roswell is their second place of employment as a part-time fire department member, that if there were a regional event, they would be called to respond to their place of employment, to the first city, which would leave the city of Roswell vulnerable. And I have to tell you, as a public servant, knowing that and knowing not doing anything about it, I would find that unconscionable. Because I think one of the responsibilities, the first responsibilities of a public servant is public safety. And that is looking out for the scenarios, the worst case scenarios that can happen to your residents. That's the first reason. The gap analysis will talk about that in greater detail. The second great thing that the gap analysis will demonstrate is that we have tremendous opportunities where we have real liability as a city based upon the almost impossible task of managing a part-time fire department. For example, on Tuesdays, we're generally fully staffed. During hunting season, there are times where we are at 50% staffing. Just last Thursday, for example, we had a slew of high school and college graduations. And as a consequence, we were not fully staffed on a Thursday for Alive in Roswell, among many other events at several fire stations, just on a normal Thursday, just because it is a part-time fire department. And so many of those fine people that serve us in the city so well, at their first place of employment, would not be able to call out. But as a part-time fire department personnel, they are allowed to call out. So it puts us in many times vulnerable as a city from the standpoint of resources of being able to respond. That's my first part. The last part is, I have talked to a lot of them. We have a tremendous fire department, and that needs to be resoundingly clear. And this is not a criticism of anybody in the fire department. We have tremendous people. We just have to solve for the equation of ensuring our safety of the citizens, of our residents of the city all the time, and a full-time fire department doesn't. And it is noticeable that if you look at all our sister cities, they have full-time fire departments, and they're all smaller than us, interestingly enough. That's my commentary on that. And the other question was, what was the other question? I forgot. Roswell Inc. I will take the absolute burden of responsibility, blame, and criticism for Roswell Inc. I'm a supporter of Roswell Inc.'s, and I think I have seen a very positive movement from the leadership of Roswell Inc. in the first 5 months of this mayor and city council. I've seen some real activity that I'm very optimistic about, and as a consequence of, we did not increase their budget. We just made their budget the same as last year. So, but any criticism is duly noted, and you can certainly put me at the forefront of that. So, but I appreciate those comments, and I think they will. Yes, sir. Again, I don't know who you are either, so you're going to,
Yeah, I'm David Johnson, live at 3000 Roxburgh Drive, in Willis Country Club, Roswell, Willow Springs.
welcome, David.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I thought that was a great presentation. I've read all 306 pages of the budget PDF. It's great if you need to go to sleep. Put me to sleep pretty easily when I worked the night shift last week, so it's good medicine. I'd like to ask Ryan a question, if that's appropriate, on his presentation.
I don't think Ryan wants a good question from you, David, but I guess
Well,
we'll have to allow
I'll ask
it.
you a question. When
No,
he did the tax compare, I don't want to this is not what I was coming to talk about, but when he did the tax comparison of the different cities, he left Alpharetta out. There was, Roswell, Sandy Springs, and all.
Yes.
I assume that's because Alpharetta is only taxed on the number of employees, and there's no tax on revenues. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. So I was just wondering why Alpharetta was out.
It
All right,
wasn't- it
now to
wasn't-
what I really want to talk about.
It wasn't an apple-to-apple comparison.
Exactly, yeah. Is I love sidewalks. Everyone here knows I love sidewalks, but I'm not going to talk about my personal conquest of sidewalks in my neighborhood. Instead, I'm going to like to talk about the citywide. I believe the sidewalk connectivity program in this budget is $1 million. Is that correct? And then the road resurfacing has dropped from $8 million to $1.5 million. Is that relatively correct?
Excuse me, it was 8 million in a prior year. 5 million of that though was one-time money.
One time from the LMIG funds.
And I believe the intent of the proposed budget is that we're funding half of the recommended amount, which is 3 million now, and that we could come back at mid-year and add the other 1.5 million.
Okay.
And just a comment on that, it is going to meet the same regular schedule as 22 on the paving platform. So nothing changes on the paving
Okay.
platform.
So, I feel like our city, great budget. Y'all are very good stewards of our money. I have no problem with the spending aspect for the most part of what the city has done. I think it's very well done. But we only have the opposite problem from the federal government. The federal government spends too much money and doesn't collect enough. And I don't feel like we collect enough money, which that's a dangerous term for a pretty staunch Republican to say, because $1 million in sidewalk connectivity citywide ain't gonna do it. We got a 50-year backlog on sidewalks. So as you go into your next meetings, big projects before July 1st, I implore you to create a sidewalk, pedestrian, bike master plan that's actually fundable and builds these things versus waiting 50 years. Let's get them built in 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. Let's have a separate funding mechanism, franchise fees, a separate sales tax. I'm not an elected official. I'm not a city budget guy. Y'all can figure out how to raise the money. But $1 million of sidewalk connectivity is not enough. We got to step up our game on that. And we can't live as a work, live, play community and then say, here you go. This is, I want you to walk on the goat path to school, and then you can walk on the goat path to work, and then walk on the goat path to the park. It doesn't work that way. So that's all I ask. Thank you.
David, thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Welcome.
Thank you for welcoming me. My name is Tony Kirk. I am a proud graduate of the Citizen Police Academy, and I just want to commend the budget people for looking out for the police.
Tony, tell us where you're from, sir.
I live in the River Falls subdivision.
Thank you, sir.
I'm from Chicago. I
we
moved
welcome
here.
you.
But I just wanted to take a few seconds just to say that I attended that class. It was a wonderful class. The whole police department was fantastic. They're passionate about what they do, and they just deserve all the kudos and also all the funding that they could possibly get. You say you want them to be best in class. I know from their enthusiasm, they would want to be that. And if it takes money to get them there, as a council, you need to do as much as you can to make that happen. That's all I have to say.
Tony, thank you. Thank you. Applaud that. Yes, please, David. You made Chief Jim Conroy's smile in the back. And I'm going to make a plug for the Citizens Academy. For anybody that's listening, well worth your time. And I know Chief Conroy will welcome you with open arms. Other comments from residents? Yes, sir. Again, another first-time person that we don't know.
I've never been here before in my life. I want to
Jason, do share with everybody who you are and where you're from.
Yeah, I'm Jason Yowell.
Where you from?
Comment.
Thank you, sir.
I want to commend you on the budget. I think it's a very impressive piece of work that you managed to do what you did, especially with the big increases that were laid on by the previous administration. Excellent work. I have one comment, though, and that is the business license tax. Before 2016, it was similar to what Alpharetta has. I thought that was a much more small business-friendly approach, not just from the fee standpoint, but from the privacy standpoint. Because for small businesses in a small town like this to have to reveal their gross receipts, it's intrusive. And for those of us who have property and other governing authorities, we can easily move our business license. And I think we should go back to the way it was, the way they do it in Alpharetta, because Alpharetta, as a result, is much more business friendly because they are a lot less intrusive into who's doing what in the town. That's just my personal opinion. I don't know what the revenue difference is from the way it was to the current system from 2015 to 16, but I can't imagine it is that much money that it makes such a difference to be so intrusive into the small business owners in town. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Kent, welcome.
Thank you. M.K. Sharp. I'm 8635 Steeplechase Drive in Roswell. Good evening, Mayor Wilson and City Council members. I'm not much of a public speaker, so I wrote everything down so I don't forget it. I want to support the police department, and congratulations on putting together the budget. We've been here for several meetings, and I know a lot of hours have gone into it, so I'll acknowledge that. But my interest is in the police department budget. For most citizens, public safety really trumps everything else that the city has to offer. And without safe streets, there cannot be a good quality of life. When I moved my family to Georgia in 1983, we looked in North Fulton County for good schools, a safe environment, and golf courses. So we settled where we did, in East Roswell, and chose Horseshoe Bend. Crime rates then and now have been low when compared to Atlanta and some of the other suburbs. Lately, however, and certainly in the last 2 years, crime has gotten closer to Roswell, and I think that's a concern for a lot of people, and it is for me. Not long ago, April 15th to be exact, a Friday evening, in broad daylight, a criminal attempted to break into a house on Steeplechase Drive, roughly 8 doors down from where Ann and I live. It was a brazen attempt to enter a family's residence while they were inside with their children. Fortunately, the burglar was frightened away, and the break-in was thwarted. Recently, I accepted an invitation to have coffee with the chief at Ground and Pound Coffee Shop on Holcomb Bridge Road. I had the opportunity to talk with several officers, detectives, and Chief Conroy. I was impressed with their professionalism and their dedication to their work. And tonight, I want to express my support as a taxpayer to encourage passage of the budget that funds the police department gives them the tools that they need to guard our streets and serve our citizens. I commend you, Mayor Wilson, for honoring a campaign promise to make Roswell's police department best in the region. I'm confident with the mayor and city council behind Chief Conroy and his leadership team, they'll be successful in fulfilling their mission to protect and serve the city. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Hawkeye. Thank you, sir, very much. You know, it's worth noting, it's easy to take great things for granted, and police and fire in this city are outstanding. One of the really, for those of you who don't know this, Chief Jim Conroy was the head of the DeKalb County Fire Police Department for many years. It's about 1,300 badges, and I can't tell you how incredibly blessed and fortunate this city is to have Chief Conroy's acumen, experience, and wisdom leading our police in this city. And as someone who's spent a lot of time with many of our badges over the years as a resident and have had the great really privilege of seeing these people serve and their great service to our city, I can't tell you, for example, just from a policy perspective, how unique Roswell is. For example, Chief Conroy brings a policy, and people wonder why Roswell doesn't have some of the challenges that other cities don't have. Well, a big part of it's leadership. And part of that is the leadership and the policies implemented. City of Roswell Police Department has a policy of de-escalation. And that de-escalation is critical in law enforcement, and it is really light years ahead of where most police organizations are, and it's due to Chief Conroy's wisdom, experience, and ability to navigate a team of people in a very positive way. And it shows up all the time in our city in a safer community. And therefore, I think the commitment of us as elected officials to support our public safety people is paramount. And I thank the residents for giving us the opportunity to do that. Are there any other comments from, yes, sir?
My name is Sanjay Khetan, and this is my first time here. I live in Crapple Lake Drive.
Welcome.
So my comment says that, we need to ensure that we fund enough for our police department and fire department, because that's for the basic safety for us. Because that kind of affects our lives first. The recreation and park is kind of a luxury compared to what, we get from the police department and fire department. Because if we are not alive, we cannot go to the park. So my suggestion would be to kind of look at their pay structure. And what I have found that a lot of policemen and firemen cannot afford to live in the city. So how we can kind of provide them assistance so that they be part of our city here and can live here. So that's my recommendation, would be to kind of look at their pay structure and find ways to fund the extra money, whatever is needed, so that they can afford a life what we as a resident are going through. So that's it.
Excellent, sir. Thank you for your comments, and those are wise comments. We do appreciate those. Thank you very much. Any other comments from our residents? With that being said, I thank you all for taking your time to make your comments, and I'd like to return it back to the council for questions or comments. Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson, and so thank you for all the comments. So I want to just actually respond to some of the comments. So for one of the comments regarding Roswell Inc. So I think it was a very fair and reasonable comment to make. And so the one clarification that the add here is getting them back to their original request, which is in line with last year. And so basically, it's something where I think the vote could change in the second reading. I'm optimistic it won't, because what I'm optimistic is going to happen is that for the first time, there's going to be full accountability and aligned vision and the opportunity for Roswell Inc. to really be working really, I think, fantastically with this mayor and council, as well as supporting a brand new economic development director. So I think as long as there's an interest and a willingness and support to really be fully accountable to the residents and aligned really with that vision of mayor and council, I think it is a really good opportunity for the best thing possible for economic development director and really all of our economic development activities. So it could change at the second reading, but again, I'm supporting it tonight, fully optimistic that we're gonna have a great partnership there. So that was number one. Number two, regarding the fire department, this need and this to go and have full-time firefighters, it's not new. So it's not under the current leadership or anything like that. I was working closely as a liaison over public safety with Chief Burnett, a few years back, and Chief Burnett I have a tremendous amount of respect for, and he certainly was educating me on just the challenges of scheduling and all the different risks associated. I will say what is being funded in this budget is not funding the full 5-year plan, et cetera. So I personally think there is possibly the opportunity to find what that right balance is and potentially still absolutely look at part-time as well. But right now, having every single one that's actually going to go into to fires and go on calls being part-time is just not a risk that's sustainable. So I just wanted to say with that. Also mentioning the sidewalks. So without a doubt, I would absolutely love to add, regarding sidewalks and the importance of pedestrian safety, connectivity, quality of life, all that with sidewalks. I do want to stress that this $1 million in here, that is certainly more than a number of recent years that I was a part of with different budgets. So I was really glad to see the number getting back higher again. But also there's T-SPLOS money, which covers sidewalks as well. So that's not covered in this. And then in general, not just related to sidewalks, but actually for anyone listening, if as you look through this budget between now and the second reading, if there's any feedback that you have, I'd love to have it. Right now, my email, I'm having an issue with my emails not working. So if you can actually email Michelle, who supports us, she will set up time for us to talk. My one caveat and request is, though, if you have an ad that you're proposing, you have an offsetting delete, because I think we could all agree on 100 things we'd love to add to this budget. But that's not the hard part of the job. The hard part is making it balanced, making sure it's fair to taxpayers, and making sure that it's responsible. So again, if you have both an add and an offsetting delete, I'd love to set up some time and talk between now and the second reading. And then lastly, since there was certainly some great feedback, without a doubt, I think there's so many great examples of our police department doing an absolutely great job. And again, what I'm just stressing is let's make it easier for them and make sure we have the best-in-class pay that they both deserve, and also sets us all up for success for really the best-in-class police department ongoing and permanently. So again, although we'd always love to find changes and always ways to improve it, I am certainly ready to support the first reading tonight, which, as mentioned, could change on June 13th.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Councilmember Vanstrom.
Yeah, since the question about Roswell Inc. is really right in my wheelhouse as a liaison to economic development, I wanted to make a couple comments also. Janet, I appreciate what you said, but we have to realize too that Roswell Inc. is only asking for what they had last year to sustain what they've been doing. And we will be adding an economic development director, but there is no way that we're in any position with a brand new economic development director to understand that relationship at this point. And it is going to be an amazing relationship. We're going to be spending time figuring out where those holes are that you mentioned at Roswell Inc. And I will tell you, their small business entity is phenomenal. They support the small businesses in this town. I've had 5 months now to work with Steve Stroud and his team over there, and the support is phenomenal for anytime businesses have a change in their business and they want to come to City Hall and find out how to do additions and things like that. They're very, very helpful. And they also are important for business retention for small businesses, and he's very active with the small businesses. I've been very impressed. There are some deficiencies in this city. We knew when we took office that the challenge, and the mayor has been working very, very hard on this, is how do we attract the bigger business, the corporates, the ITs, the health. And those are the things that I'm looking forward to working with the Economic Development Director on, that goes a little outside of perhaps what Roswell Inc. with their limited team has been able to accomplish. And also, just to compliment one more time, the mayor and this council and the support and the attention that we're giving to economic development in the business corridors is making a huge difference working with Roswell Inc. And we look forward to that Economic Development Director joining the team.
Peter, would you like to make an announcement about the Economic Development Director?
Would I let him know who he is?
Yeah, time, and when he starts?
Announcing our hiring of the Economic Development Director. I get to put a check on the box. Daryl Connolly. By the way, this is very frustrating, sitting next to Councilman Palermo. He's so young. He can read the smallest print without any glasses. It is really irritating. Daryl Connolly, we're very excited to have him joining us. He will be joining us, I believe, Randy, June the 7th. His history, he's been working in New York in the economic development field, and I think the area that really caught my eye with him is that he's working a lot in redevelopment, and redevelopment is what Roswell is looking at. We don't have a lot of new areas. We're looking at areas that we need to redevelop, and that's going to be very, very helpful. He lived in Roswell, so he has a passion for Roswell. He's looking forward to coming back and being involved in the city. He understands the dynamics of this city. He understands that the residents come first, and he appreciates that. He appreciates all the history and all the culture and all the beauty that's in this city. I think that makes him a wonderful choice as an economic development director for our town. And also, I would finally say the thing that impressed me in the interview process the most, personally, was the fact that he enjoys the challenge and the commitment of project completion. He shows a good history on completing projects that are initiated, and that's one thing in this city that sometimes there seems to be a lag from point A to point Z to getting complete in the development of projects that we have going. And he will be tasked with that duty immediately and make sure that we move things along in this town as we keep building and growing our commercial district. So pretty excited about Daryl, and you'll get to meet him in a couple of weeks.
Well said, Councilmember Vanstrom. Any other comments from council? I'm going to do something unprecedented before I take it to a vote. I'd like for a comment because he's been an integral part of this process, I'd like for our city administrator, Mr. Knighton, to comment on this budget process before I take it to vote.
Thank you, Mayor. I would simply echo the sentiments of Mayor and Council and staff. I would add a few things. This has been a very robust budget process. I can tell you that it's been somewhat unconventional in terms of the approach, which I certainly appreciate as city administrator. I can tell you that the mayor and council members have spent countless hours poring over every aspect of this budget. And what you have before you this evening is a sustainable budget, but it's a visionary budget to handle the current and future operations of the city of Roswell to be the #1 family community in America. And so I certainly appreciate all of the staff members who had input into the budget, and again, the mayor and council for their foresight and their vision to develop a budget that's sustainable over time and a budget that will serve the citizens of Roswell at the highest level. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. And before I take it to vote, I want all the budget people to stand up. I want to give them some recognition, including Ryan and Lynn and everybody else that worked on this budget. So thank you. Thank you all very much. With that being said, Do I have a motion for the approval of the FY 2023 budget for the city of Roswell, Georgia, in the amount of $172,884,050?
Yes, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve the budget,
Thank you,
FY '23 budget.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Do I have a second? I have a second from Councilmember Hills. Thank you very much. All those in favor, please raise your hands. The budget passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Next is the consent agenda. Are there any comments? Yes, sir.
Yes, just one, excuse me. Just want to have one clarification from the budget staff so that we ensure that everything has been approved accordingly.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, let me mention again, I'm sorry. Yes, I just wanted to have the budget staff ensure clarity so that everything is in order with respect to all aspects of the budget approval.
Yes, just wanted to make sure the proposed add delete list, whether that was included in the motion, or if not, that would need, we also need a vote to whether or not to include those items.
Can I clarify the motion?
Yes, ma'am. Please clarify, Councilmember Hall.
I'll restate the motion to approve the FY '23 budget as presented this evening with the proposed adds and deletes.
Ryan, does that suffice?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councilmember Hills. I have a second. All those in favor of the FY '23 budget as proposed with the adds and deletes, please raise your hands. I know. The motion passes. Thank you very much unanimously. Next is the consent agenda. Are there any comments or questions from council? Being no questions or comments from council, is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on the consent agenda? Being that there's no one from the public that'd like to speak on the consent agenda, I'll take it back to council. Any comments or questions from council? Being no comments or questions from council, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Thank you, Councilmember Vanstrom. I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second from Councilmember Mortland. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please raise your hands. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Well, it looks like we lost Councilmember Palermo. The meeting cannot continue. I have a request. Please forgive me for those of you who've been waiting patiently for an hour and 50 minutes. I have a request for a quick 5-minute break, as you saw the council member take. So give us 5 minutes for a quick 5-minute break. I do apologize. Thank you. Back again. Next is the Administration and Governance Department. Councilmember Hills, will you read the administration item, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Number one, right here, approval of a resolution to accept the 2022 Community Development Block Grant, which is also known as CDBG, allocations and budget amendment 225-70101-05-23-22 in the amount of $450,000. And I will turn that over to you, Mr. Alford. Thank you, our grant specialist.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this is a resolution to approve the allocations and subsequently the annual action plan for the 2022 Community Development Block Grant. We opened this application process on November 1st. It closed on November 30th. Staff had estimated that we would receive around $450,000 from HUD. MCC, or Mayor and Council, reviewed the proposals and selected the 3 activities that you see on the screen here for funding. That was done at 11/12, the April 12th committee meeting. Staff then opened the HUD-required 30-day public comment period to review the annual action plan. That plan concluded tonight. You guys received some comments, and those have all been forwarded to your attention. So basically, the item is up for approval. The resolution is to approve and submit the annual action plan. There is one change from your notes, and that is HUD did notify us of the official amounts. We had estimated $450,000, but in the comment period time, they came back with our official amount is $449,653. So that was a $347 difference. And simplest solution there was just to reduce the administrative and planning component. So that's what you see here, and that's what the resolution would be for. If approved, we would go ahead and submit the annual action plan to HUD.
Thank you, Mr. Alford. I appreciate it. Questions for Mr. Alford from council? Councilmember Hills.
I don't have questions, but I have a couple of comments. May I?
Yes, ma'am.
So, Mr. Alford, thank you very much. You and Mr. Blitch got me up to speed really early this year on how the CDBG process works, so I appreciate that. I want to first start by saying that the partner organizations, the organizations that applied, the groups, the individuals, and the other outfits that applied for these are outstanding and supportive for the city of Roswell and well beyond that. Many, many people that we'll never know have been beneficiaries of what we do in this city on so many different levels, some on one-offs here or there and some on multiple. So I want to recognize that. We had a lot of good applications, really good applications. And then just wanted to bring clarification in case whomever's listening or anybody that's here. The application process was announced October 28th of 2021, and that process of accepting applications was November 1st through the 30th of last year. So when this mayor and council started off this year, all of those applications were ready to go. They were handed right over to us, and this is no reflection on past administration. The previous administration did a great job, did exactly what they were supposed to do, and then we got that list. So I just wanted to clear up that there had been some conversation about us super soliciting and going after organizations to apply, which we do want, and then why would we do that and maybe make decisions that didn't fulfill all the requests from the applicants. So I just wanted to let you know about the timeline on that. This happens this way every single year. And then earlier today, there was a public comment forum, and I don't know if you want to speak to that, Mr. Alford, but I just wanted to let you know that. The other couple of things I wanted to tell you is that this mayor and council, and frankly, the mayor was our sidekick here, but this was a council decision. We did not, we did listen, but we didn't really include the staff on this. This was a council decision on the results of this award process this time. And we were very intentional in serving Roswell residents. I mentioned a lot of these organizations that applied this year have served wonderfully Roswell residents, other sister city residents, those in Fulton County, and my understanding is some even beyond that. So while we're grateful for that, we feel and continue to feel a responsibility to our Roswell residents first. So that was a big criteria for us. So I just wanted to add those couple of comments in there, and I will yield my time.
Thank you, Councilmember Hills. Any other thoughts? Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. So, this is certainly an example where we're certainly so fortunate to have so many different organizations that do so much for the community, and where I certainly wish there was a much larger pool of money for these purposes, and ultimately, as I always have when looking through this, safety is always really a top priority, and just really overall quality of life for Roswell residents, and basically in looking at each proposal, each project, so each organization, it's a specific project, so it's not just a grant, just to a organization, but it's what is the specific purpose. And frankly, the water line replacement is a major issue that's been going on for too long in our city. So given that it's within the CDBG group and location, it's really we have an area with lower income individuals that have water lines that, first of all, an issue with the galvanized. It's led to a number of Roswell residents over the years that had the galvanized pipes to have brown water coming out of their faucets. More importantly, much more importantly, is the issue with these very outdated pipes is from a water pressure standpoint. So what staff's educated us on is those were 6 inches. Nowadays, they're 8 inches, and especially being on the outskirts of the water utility, that creates an issue combined with the reduced fire hydrants, resulting in really risks for this lower income area if, God forbid, there's ever a fire. And so just knowing the water pressure issues and from that standpoint, and then thirdly, for a major issue with these pipes, which I've learned from staff, is related to the asbestos. So the asbestos is not an issue for someone drinking the water. So if you're drinking the water, the asbestos is not affecting it. The issue is every time there's a repair need, anytime there's digging and something's ruptured, or it's just because it's failing in general, when that repair is needed, what I've learned from staff is that's creating a major issue for anyone around there, as well as, of course, those working on it, of just the asbestos being cut and going into the air and failing into the air. So at the end of the day, I think without a doubt we saw a lot of great projects here, but we have a lot of residents that don't have a voice, that really do deserve to be safe from these risks. So just please understand, I certainly would have preferred that the CDBG funds were more than the $450,000, and great estimate certainly by staff. But looking at it, this was the item that I certainly saw from my standpoint as what was the largest safety and welfare issue of the people of Roswell, and so that's certainly where I felt needs some prioritization, and really should not be having the can kicked the way it has in past years, because frankly I feel these residents certainly deserve better.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Okay. Councilmember Vanstrom, sorry.
Yeah, I just like to piggyback on the comments so far. When I explored what the CDBG program was all about, you read what they're looking for, and when I heard about the water lines and the safety issues that Councilman Palermo and Hills have referred to, it's one of the biggest highlights is to create a suitable living environment for the low income and moderate income persons of your town. And this struck me as a perfect fit for that, as well as public facility improvements in low-income areas. So unfortunately, we don't have funds for everybody, but this is a real true need for some people who really need our services and our support at this point in time. So I'm happy to be supporting it.
Other council? I will share, let me share something, and because I know that this is a very volatile and hot issue. In fact, I've gotten several texts, many from friends. I got a text literally as walking in this meeting, and this is kind of a lead-in, so I understand. This is, this text, for example, says, taking back the CDBG money from the nonprofits, that's low, man. So I want to give you some understanding of the perspective of how we came to this. And when we're talking about some of the nonprofits, we're talking about great organizations in the city like the Child Development Academy, Star House, Drake House, Homestretch, North Fulton Charities, RDOC, just a bunch of great organizations, nonprofits in our city that do great work. And so I want to give some understanding of how did we get here from the standpoint of decision-making. And so when this council and mayor began office on January 2nd, looked at hundreds of things and asked questions about 100 things, and CDBG came up. And for 4 of us, being brand new to the CDBG process, asked for an explanation about CDBG. And I'll give you an example. And it's very simple. So what is CDBG and what is it supposed to do? And this is kind of just give you some clarity on it from our perspective. The CDBG entitlement program eligibility requirements. The CDBG, the Community Development Block Grant Entitlement Program, provides annual grants on a formula basis to entitled cities and counties to develop viable urban communities by providing decent housing and a suitable living environment, and by expanding economic opportunities principally for low and moderate income persons. The program is authorized under Title I of the Housing Community Development Act of 1974, Public Law 93383, as amended by 42 United States Code 5301, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it says that basically HUD, the Housing of Urban, the HUD awards grants to entitlement communities, HUD award grants to entitlement community grantees to carry out a wide range of community development activities directed towards revitalizing neighborhoods, economic development, and providing improved community facilities and services. And so, and by the way, as a proponent and a supporter of many of the aforementioned great nonprofits at CDA, Star House, Drake House, Homestretch, North Fulton Charities, RDOC, and as a person who personally contributes to them on a financial basis, to many of them, and will continue to, that this was not meant towards as an affront towards them. It was meant as trying to serve what was the intent of CDBG, and recognizing it that the 2 communities that these water lines are serving are ostensibly and principally serving people who do not have a voice, largely. And I would suggest and submit to one and all that this money is actually going to people who are the most voiceless, who do not even have a voice through a nonprofit. And one of the things we thought about was, as Councilman Palermo mentioned, was the brown water, the water pressure, and saying, you know, this is an area, for example, we talked about Flint, Michigan. This is something where we have the wherewithal through underneath CDBG to do something about it, and it fits the criteria of the program. As Councilmember Hills mentioned earlier, I don't know how the nonprofits got into the CDBG money, but I want to know that it's not an affront or an assault by this council and mayor in any shape, manner, or form. It's an intent to properly ascribe the money as we understand it under the prescription of CDBG entitlements. So that's my comments, and I understand that people are mad at us about that, but I want you to know that we seriously intended to try to do the right thing as we understood the program's intention. So with that being said, I'll hush and ask for public comment, and I'll reiterate that I know public speaking can be intimidating, and that if some of you are not comfortable speaking, I'll be happy to bring a microphone. I ask that you say where you're from as a Roswell resident and list your address and your name so we clearly all know who you are. So at this time, I'll ask for public comment. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Russell.
Hi, I'm Janet Russell, Roswell resident for a very long time, and I remember when the Star House began in 1993 at the Fraser Street Apartments. It was primarily African-American, left over from segregation days, and was low-income housing. It morphed into...
Hold on 1 second, Ms. Russell. Guys, I would ask you to please be respectful to the speaker. Thank you.
She's on her phone, don't worry. The Junior League of Atlanta saw the need for education for the kids at the Fraser Street Apartments, which used to be where the City Walk is now. So they came out here and they started the project. And I jumped right in and volunteered. Why not? I love kids. So I'd come and help them read, teach them homework. I even tried teaching them yoga. It was really fun. It was kind of funny. Over the years, that's been almost 30 years since Star House has been here, taking care of our most vulnerable children. Over the years, I jump in and volunteer, and they've expanded. When City Walk entered the picture, I called that Roswell's version of ethnic cleansing when they allowed that to be built and the other apartments to be knocked down. They went to 3 schools, Vickery Mill, Esther Jackson, and Mimosa, all Title I schools. They provide a safe place for children to be after school while their parents are working. It also helps them learn to do homework and things like that. Currently, there's 217 children. That's maximum that they can handle. However, over the years, they've probably taken care of close to 4,300 children. Now, when you think of that, don't just think of individual children. Every one of those children has 2 parents and probably 2 siblings, at least, who have been affected by them being there after school. So over the years, probably Star House has taken care of 18,000 Roswell residents. They all live, as you just mentioned, within the the boundaries of Roswell. This isn't any place else. Over the years, these children have become productive citizens. They still live in Roswell. I say this because one day I was at Chick-fil-A and a young woman behind the counter said, "Miss Janet, it's me." And I said, "Who are you?" "I'm Fatima. You taught me at Star House." She was a mother now. Her husband is a house painter. She said, "I remember when you used to cross us at the street on Norcross Street to take us to the library to get books. You'd make all the cars stop because we didn't have a traffic light at the corner and cars didn't stop for a bunch of little brown kids and black kids. They didn't care." We have a Roswell employee who was part of Star House because I taught English at night as a volunteer for years to new arrivals. And he works at the recycling center, which I happened to start also. And he said to me one day, "Miss Janet, it's Roberto." And I went, "Oh my gosh." He said, "I remember when you used to invite us to your house on Sundays," because I did, because Hispanic men missed having a family here. So I made them take a shower and get all dressed up and come to my house for tea and dessert on Sundays, and we would practice our English. He's a productive Roswell citizen resident paying taxes and working for the city. You have an obligation to take care of those children, the 18,000 people that have been affected since then. I understand water lines. Believe me, I know I'm a water nerd. But I'm just kind of curious because Maxwell Road's almost in Alpharetta. Does the city of Roswell provide water for that, or is that Fulton County water and we're just providing the pipelines? Just curious. Also, I read an article in the AJC this week that a lot of the cities are getting all this Build Back America money. I don't know, it's got some acronym. And they said how they were going to be spending it on infrastructure. Why aren't we getting some of that money and using it on infrastructure? And why are we spending $44,000 on administration and planning on how to spend the money? That's a waste of money. $44,000 to plan it and administrate it? No. We have staff. So since we always begin our meetings with prayers, I thought I'd give you a couple prayers. This is Proverbs 22:6. "Train up a child in the way he should go, and even when he is old, he will not depart from it." And Mark 7:6 says, "Israel was right when he prophesied about you hypocrites. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are not for me." I think you need to reconsider this and consider the impact of the lives. You're going to find the money to fix those pipes. I remember when brown water came out of my pipes. They found the money. You found the money for
Thanks, Ms.
Oxbow
Russell.
Road.
Thank you.
I've met 5
Yes,
minutes.
ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, the money's there where you couldn't find it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Please share with us who you are and where you live.
This is a microphone to speak. All right, this
Yes.
is interesting. Okay. So my name is Maggie Goldman, and I am a board member with Family Promise of North Fulton and DeKalb, which is right over here at 89 Grove Way in Roswell.
And where do you live? I'm sorry.
I live in Johns Creek. I'm representing Family Promise as a group.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Maggie Goldman. I'm representing Family Promise of North Fulton DeKalb and our clients as a member of the Family Promise Board. We are disappointed to find the City of Roswell has chosen to reallocate its community development block grant funds to a water line project instead of funding its local nonprofits as it has done in the past. While Family Promise is not one of the potential recipients of the CDBG funding, many of the organizations originally slated to do so are integral to the work we do with families experiencing homelessness in North Fulton. Many of our families are referred and obtain transitional housing through the Drake House and Homestretch after graduating from Family Promise. Family Promise is housed in the Grove Way Community Center along with 3 other nonprofits, Children's Development Academy, Homestretch, the Grove Way Community Group. Family Promise partners with North Fulton Community Charities for clothing, the GED program, utility assistance, and more. Family Promise partners with the YMCA for childcare. Family Promise partners with the Roswell Housing Authority and for housing, and are both on the North Fulton Community Continuum of Care. I'd also like to know how much Mayor and Council are taking public comment into account when comments are due at 5 p.m., a public hearing is at 6 p.m., and the meeting to approve all the funds for the water line repairs are in the annual action plan is at 7 p.m., all the same night. Cities receive a great deal of federal funding. Why can't we use American Rescue Plan funds to make these repairs instead? The Director of Public Works stated these repairs are not to improve water quality, as the water quality meets the standard in the area. Rather, these repairs are high priority because they are, in the event there's a water line break, the asbestos in the pipe could pose a danger to workers, not residents, if the asbestos becomes friable. If that were to happen, the workers would be protected by wearing extra PE. They have like all these masks and the gadgets and stuff that they wear when they work with asbestos. However, I just want to emphasize that the Director of Public Works indicated these improvements were to get ahead of potential breaks, not because of impacts to residential health today. If you're not willing to change your position on the reallocation of these CDBG funds, please let us know how you plan to keep your commitment to the local nonprofits which has received this funding and have come to expect it in their budgets. Every missed funding opportunity is more time spent trying to find new funding source, which reduces the amount of time staff can spend providing direct service to clients. I'm sure you can agree this is the most important work among our local nonprofits. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Yes, ma'am. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Wilson and esteemed City of Roswell Council members. My name is Jean Rarick, and this is my husband, Tom, and we reside at 620 Jones Road in Roswell, Georgia. We are here this evening to ask that you please reconsider your Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG allocations for 2022. We are deeply invested in the City of Roswell, where for 40 years, my husband Tom and I have been homeowners, business owners, and raised our 2 sons. I have been able to utilize experience, having served 8 years on the Roswell Design Review Board, and I was employed for 5 years as the Roswell City Engineer in the Community Development Department. I used that experience to research the 2022 CDBG proposed and passed allocations and projects. Currently, I am honored to serve as conference president for the Society of St. Vincent de Paul at St. Peter Chanel Catholic Church here in Roswell. St. Vincent de Paul members represent every section and demographic of the nation. We identify issues critical to those living in poverty and need. and help bring attention to them so communities and elected officials can help develop strategies and tactics that will provide the most effective and efficient means to reduce or eliminate poverty. This is difficult for me to do this evening because as of Ascension, I am called to serve those in need with humility. But this evening, I am here to represent the voices of those living in need right here in Roswell. Locally, Society of St. Vincent de Paul members visit many low to moderate income neighbors, also known as LMI neighbors, that's a HUD acronym, who would typically benefit from the CDBG funding. There are 4 St. Vincent de Paul conferences serving Roswell residents located at St. Peter's Chanel, St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Bridget's, and St. Andrew Catholic churches. Together, these 4 St. Vincent de Paul conferences have served more than 1,500 unique Roswell households. Most of the neighbors whom we serve in Roswell are experiencing situational poverty caused by catastrophic factors such as job loss, illness, divorce, or similar crises that could happen to any one of us. St. Vincent de Paul caseworkers connect many of our neighbors in crisis to the nonprofits who have applied for the 2022 CDBG funds. Allow me to thank the city for taking advantage of lifting the 15% limit on public services and allocating 82% of the CDBG coronavirus funds for public services. Due to the pandemic, many of our Roswell neighbors have needed assistance with rent, utilities, food, childcare, transportation, tutoring, and workforce training. However, the CDBG coronavirus funds were not a substitute for the annual CDBG funds, but meant to support new public services that would prevent, prepare for, or respond to coronavirus. CDBG funds help address important goals of the city as initially stated in the 2018 to 2022 consolidated plan. This is the City of Roswell consolidated plan. The nonprofits of our community utilize CDBG funds to help the city meet its stated goals in the consolidated plan, such as, and I quote, "The city will continue to encourage leveraging of federal funds to increase services to residents. The nonprofit organizations funded have the financial capacity through foundations and fundraising campaigns to leverage CDBG and home funds and expand their services to benefit more low and moderate income persons." Close quotes. For the 2022 round of CDBG funds, it appears that the city wishes to use them for 2 water line replacement projects that will not truly benefit any of our LMI population. Additionally, 27% of the $2,257,343 spent on water line replacement projects completed from 2018 to 2021 came from CDBG funds. This already seems excessive use of CDBG funds. I have obtained records through an open records request so that as a civil engineer, I might understand why 2 asbestos cement pipe water line replacement projects on Rocky Creek Lane and Maxwell Road are currently slated for 2022 CDBG approval funding this evening, even though they will only affect 28 low to moderate income households. And of those 28 households, 2 are vacant lots. So I think we should probably bump it down to 26. So according to the City of Roswell Public Works, there is currently no water quality problem, no discolored water. They are not replacing galvanized steel pipes on these 2 streets. They're asbestos cement. So there's no discolored water over there. There's no complaints, at least not since January of 2020, which is as far back as I asked for the records of complaints for water quality and color and all that. And only 1 of the 39 fire hydrants in the city with substandard fire flow is located in the census tract with low to moderate, 70% low to moderate income people. And that fire hydrant happens to be in the commercial part of the tract. So I don't think fire flow is going to be improved in this area either. I may be wrong, but it doesn't look like that from the records that I was able to obtain. So this is the only 70% low to moderate income census tract area that exists in the city of
Thank you,
Roswell
ma'am.
water distribution
Thank you.
area. May I get my husband to yield his 5 minutes to me?
Absolutely.
You mind?
No, he can speak, but there's not a yield to you.
You're
There's
really
not-
going to make him read my words?
Yes, ma'am.
He will do that. He's put up with my OCD stuff
I have
all
a
week
feeling
long. while
I have a feeling he's more than competent.
He is. He's more than.
All right.
So start there.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. For the last 10 years, the city of Roswell has experienced less than one AC pipe break per year, so this is highly unlikely. Thus, I contend that these two water line replacement projects will not impact lives of LMI residents of Roswell. LMI residents deserve to have their water lines maintained and replaced just like any other core water customer. As an enterprise-funded utility system, it should not require funding from CDBG when there is no real impact or hazard to LMI lives. I want to reiterate that asbestos cement pipe is not a hazard to the water quality for the residents of Roswell. Please do not make the error in thinking that we are in Flint, Michigan. This is not a lead pipe problem. Please listen to your Director of Public Works when she tells you that there is no danger to those drinking the water coming into homes through these pipes. Use CDBG funds to help at most 26 or 24 LMI households is not appropriate when many more LMI residents can be assisted when leveraging the funds through the nonprofit organizations already set up to serve LMI residents. Let me reiterate that asbestos cement pipe does not contaminate water like lead pipe. I have reviewed the proposals submitted for allocation to 2022 CDBG funds and would like to see the funds more equitably distributed and used to meet the goals as stated in the 2018-2022 consolidated plan. There is a good variety of worthy projects, and I hope that you will reconsider and allocate the 2022 CDBG funds for the good of the LMI residents of Roswell. The community nonprofits spend time and effort to submit proposals for these funds in good faith that the city would continue to support their efforts to serve the LMI residents in our community experiencing crisis and hardship. The nonprofits who applied for the CDBG funds represent the entities which we count on to extend a helping hand to lift our neighbors in need out of poverty by providing training, workforce programs, assistance applying for federal programs, rent and mortgage assistance, food pantries, childcare, tutoring, summer day camps, transportation, and other services that would not exist in Roswell if not for these nonprofits. As an example, Senior Services North Fulton will most likely be unable to continue the transportation program for seniors to and from medical and wellness appointments after receiving CDBG funding for the TOPS program every year for the last 10 years. We are fortunate in Roswell to have many churches, temples, synagogues, and nonprofit organizations who give hope to those in need so that the city does not need to spend tax money on additional programs to counter the problems that would result from hopeless persons. The proposed MCC 2022 CDBG allocation will impact at most 26 LMI residents, whereas a potential allocation using the projects as described in the proposals submitted by the local nonprofit organizations has the potential to impact 1,549 LMI units, household, and 1,645 LMI persons. This is a huge difference in community impact from the 2022 CDBG funds. We implore you on behalf of those residents who are working 2 or 3 jobs, unemployed, just too tired and depressed or busy with caregiving to make these comments for themselves. In closing, I wish to say that for Roswell to thrive, all residents must have a fair and equitable opportunity to thrive. Please allocate the 2022 CDBG funds to our local nonprofits, where the funds will make a real difference in the lives of real people who deserve to be treated with respect and care for their humanity. Thank you for all the effort you put in every day on behalf of the residents of Roswell. If you have any questions, we would be happy to answer them at any time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Would anybody else like to? Yes, sir. For the record, please state your name and address.
Jason Yowell, 5010 Old Oak Trace. I'd just like to say that I find it refreshing that you guys actually read the intent of the block grant. And the easy thing is to do what's been done in the past, and that's spread it around and be heroes to the various nonprofits that do such good work in our town. But to do this, that's courageous. It means that you take your job seriously and you're not afraid to do what is going to be maybe not popular, but what's right. And I commend you for it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would some other folks like to say anything? I'll bring a microphone out there if you need me to. Sure? Happy to do it.
Stephanie Christensen, I'm resident of Litchfield 100. I am the executive director of
Stephanie,
Storehouse.
say again. I didn't catch it. Where are you from?
Litchfield, Roswell.
Awesome. Thank you.
I grew up in Roswell. I was here since second grade, now living and raising my family here. I remember Storehouse growing up, and here I am now representing the population. And I don't want to get emotional. I'm going to keep myself under control, and this is why I was not going to come up here. I think it is super, super important that all of you, as someone said, that the brave thing to do is to do what has been done. I think it's super important to realize that the community that we live in is all inclusive. And I think it's really easy to turn your head to those who are living in the community that you do not feel you want represented as a Roswell citizen. And I think that y'all are more than welcome to always come to Storehouse to see the kids and the families that we serve on the daily. And as you're going to the restaurants and you're going to all of the facilities here within our great city, they are the parents of those kids that we are serving, that they are working the 2 and 3 jobs, right? And so water's great, fantastic. But all of the programs, and we're new to this funding. This is our first year receiving, and that's because Mimosa falls into that element. But all of the other nonprofits, the other 9 that are not here, I think it's important that we put all of the effort into this application process. And yes, it was not under y'all's administration, but maybe for this year, since it's within our budgets, it would be very commendable if you maintained what had been expected to have the continued support for this year, and then you can reallocate the funds for next year for those nonprofits to not have the expectation that when the efforts are put into play and the support has been for years upon years. I don't even know how many years it's been, the nonprofits have been accustomed to getting this funding. It just seems only fair to the nonprofits themselves, the citizens that we're funding, as well as the community as a whole, that everything is transparently put out. And again, I was not prepared to speak. I'm emotionally based at this very moment, but I just think that y'all need to please think of all of the little faces that we have in this community. And it goes to the seniors as well. I mean, this is playing out for our entire community. That's all I'm gonna say.
Thank you, Stephanie. Would anybody else like to speak? And I said I'm happy to come out there and bring a microphone to you if you'd feel more comfortable. Okay, that being said, I'm going to bring it back to council for comments, or, yes, sir, Councilman Palermo.
So I actually want to request staff to come up, whether that's Sharon or Chris, but I heard some differing things from what I had heard from staff. So basically, one of the things I had heard was that it's not galvanized steel, which is what creates the brown water, and basically asking if you can address that as well as other aspects of what you heard, because I've certainly heard from all of you from years on what a priority this needs to be, and just really the hardship and the risk that those low to middle income residents are living with these pipes.
Thank you, Councilman Palermo. I have Chris Boyd here with me tonight, who's our water utility manager. No one can speak to this issue better than Chris, so I thought it was important that he was here this evening. I wanted to start with one question that I heard from Ms. Russell, and it was a very good one because, honestly, I had the same question when I saw Maxwell Road. There are 2 Maxwell Roads in Roswell, and one of them does exist within our water district, which is the one that Chris has up here. It's off of Grimes Bridge Road. It's off of Grimes Bridge, and it runs east-west there, and it also ties in there to Rocky Creek Drive, and then you see Rocky Creek Lane there on the south. That's the other location of the project. So,
Is that served by water in Roswell?
yeah, yes, ma'am, it is.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I'm going to ask Chris just to talk a little bit about the galvanized pipes and what we experienced over time as far as water quality goes. You want to go ahead?
So with the galvanized pipes, we've experienced a lot of leaks on them. We've gotten also a lot of complaints of discolored water, brownish orange, which is the iron and manganese breaking down in the line. We've also gotten pressure complaints. So over time with galvanized pipes, there's buildup in the line due to chemical reaction to the pipe lining called tuberculation. So when you start out with a 2-inch line, today you may have a 3/4-inch line feeding as a main. On Maxwell Road, we actually have 2 mains on that road. One is a 6-inch asbestos concrete line, or AC pipe, and there's a 2-inch galvanized steel line that runs parallel with it. Both have customers feeding off each line, so as part of this replacement, we're replacing both the 2-inch galvy and the 6-inch AC pipe with a new 8-inch ductile iron pipe is what was in the request. The other issue with Maxwell Road, there's a couple of hydrants on that leg right now that currently the hydrant spacing is more than 500 feet apart. And per code, hydrant spaces can't be more than 500 feet apart. So we'd be adding an additional hydrant to this lane for better fire protection, having more hydrants on the road for fire to be able to help fight fires with. Rocky Creek Lane has a 6-inch AC line that ties into the 6-inch AC on Rocky Creek Drive with a 2-inch galvanized loop that feeds those residents on that street. So the application mentions replacing the 6-inch AC, but we're also replacing the 2-inch galvanized that are on both of these streets as well. Hope that answers some of the questions.
So everyone's going to be served off the 8-inch ductile iron pipe.
Correct.
Ultimately. And one of the reasons why we haven't had water quality issues that you were sharing with me earlier is part of the reason is we've been very proactive up in that area as far as flushing and being attentive to water age in that area. Is that fair?
That is fair. We've also done a lot of water line replacements in this area Charles Place Phase 2, which included Thomas Street and Opal Drive, Mansell Circle, just to name a few of them, that we've already done upgrades in these areas where there were AC pipe that had issues with breaks. And just going back with the Maxwell Road, since I've been over the water department since 2006, we've actually had 4 main breaks on that line, 3 on the 6-inch and 1 on the 2-inch. We've had a low pressure complaint on that line. I already talked about the hydrant spacing. And for Rocky Creek Lane, we've had 1 main break. I haven't had any water quality issues, but part of this is to be proactive so that we don't have these low pressure complaints or water quality issues with discolored water, taste and odor issues. We want to be proactive and not have these issues for these residents. And also as part of the design for this particular loop, there's no way to flush that 2-inch galvanized line other than through the meter or through the service line. So as part of the design, we'll be putting in a 2-inch flush hydrant so that we can better flush the system and improve quality in the area.
Just one last thing, Chris looked up the age of these pipes. One is 67 years old, the other one's 61, which put them well past their serviceable life. So these are on the list regardless. And as you know, we have an old system. We've been in business since, what did you tell me, 1936?
The water plant went into operation in 1936.
So this is a part of what we do. They're in an area that is eligible for CDBG funding, and we certainly appreciate the opportunity to put these projects at the very top of the list and get them executed.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you for giving that clarification regarding the galvanized steel and based on the other things that we had heard. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. I just wanted to read something from the summary, that both these activities advance the city's consolidated planning goal of improving public facilities in low-income areas because the water lines are located in Block Group 3 of the 114.05 Census Tract, according to HUD's most recent FY21 low and moderate income summary data. The new water lines will improve water quality and fire flows for 1,690 LMI residents in the area. So more than 1,500 residents are going to benefit from this improvement from a safety standpoint. And I guess I'm not speaking to you guys unless you want to stand up. I don't have any specific questions for you guys, so if you want to sit down.
Right, thank you.
Oh, follow-up question before you sit down.
Okay, sorry. I work for a firm that has a very, very large nonprofit base. And as part of my work, or a good amount of the companies or businesses or entities that I work for are nonprofit. And I'm a consulting CFO for them, and that is our life. We are writing and applying for grants. And that's part of what you do as a nonprofit. And you get grants sometimes, you budget for grants sometimes, and they don't come through, and you pivot. And we as a city, as our grant department knows, we apply for grants, and we budget, we have a TBD out there, and we have projects for grants, and we don't get selected for grants. It's tough, and all these projects are deserving, and these organizations, especially, everybody that serves our community, I wish we had an endless amount of funds just to fund them all. But when I took the oath, it's for the health, safety, and welfare of our residents. And that's where I went and I looked up the definition of what CDBG is intended for. And I had to pull myself back and say, are we doing the right thing for our residents? And that is the basis for my decision. And being in the business to work with so many nonprofits, all over the country, it's hard to make these decisions, but this was the decision that I had to make in this role. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Councilmember Palermo?
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. So a question I have for staff is certainly I don't want a single of our residents having the risk of groundwater or the actual current situations of the low water flow with the fire risk, as well as of course the asbestos risk. But help me understand, how is the number determined? How, basically what I'm wondering is, how does I don't know if this is a water system question, or how is it determined that the number of low-income individuals that are affected? How is that determined?
Yeah, I can provide clarification there. There's a miscommunication. It's totally on me between me and Public Works when we were going over the water line applications. Traditionally, we have qualified these programs as limited clientele, and they've been adjacent to like the Drake House or the Housing Authority. So we've done it by a per person basis. In this particular instance, we are quantifying, we're using a different qualification and category, which is the low to moderate income census tract, which is what Councilmember Hall alluded to. And so HUD provides us those data tables, and it qualified or verified that the 1405 block group 3, the census tract 1405 block group 3, was a low to moderate, 72% low to moderate income, and the total number that would benefit would be 1690. So I think Chris was providing individuals that he felt would be adjacent to the water line itself, but HUD allows us to apply the total to the total block group.
Councilmember Hills?
Thank you. While you're there, Mr. Alford, if you wouldn't mind giving some clarification for our listeners and participants here tonight on the $45,000 administration and planning, what that actually pays for. And number two, if you wouldn't mind also just talking about, there was a question or comment about the timing of the hearing today at 6 o'clock for public comment, just how that works and how many years that's been in place, this, if that's brand new or if that's something that's become customary or expected. Please, sir. Thank you.
So the admin and planning allocation goes to pay for city staff to oversee the projects. It's partially for that. This year, we've got a unique expenditure that's on the horizon where we have to do a new consolidated plan and what HUD calls the Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing Plan. Those two things will define the goals for the City of Roswell CDBG program for the next 5 years. So we estimated that's going to be another potentially $20,000 to $30,000. We usually hire a consultant to get a fresh set of eyes on that. And so that's where that comes from this year. It also goes to advertising and any other kind of technical services. So in the past, we've done the proposal process through zoomgrants.com. That costs money. There's other professional services like environmental reviews that we hire engineers to do.
And so that $45,000 would, we don't know for sure, but would not be something that would come up next year in the CDBG?
We don't know for sure. It just depends on if we have a surplus going into next year. HUD allows us up to 20%. It depends on the type of projects that we have. Traditionally, we've held those funds because we were overseeing numerous subrecipients. So, you know, that was a different burden for us. So this year is specifically for the consolidated plan.
Thank you. And then the hearing earlier today, please,
So
sir.
the public hearing, the way HUD requires us to have 2 public hearings a year. One of those has to be before the annual action plan. We post the annual action plan draft. The core of that is the allocations themselves. So if we don't make a decision there, we can't just post something and say 30-day public comment period is open. We're taking ideas kind of thing. Those kind of things have to go into with the development of the first consolidated plan or the one that's overseeing this particular annual action plan. So back in 2018 when we started that consolidated plan. So the reason we do that is, you know, we have to have the allocations approved. So, you know, we traditionally have done that in some sort of public setting, in this case committee. So mayor and council or the public knows how we came to that decision. And then we do the 30-day public comment period. There was a period in the last 2 years during COVID where HUD waived the 30-day public comment period. So that may be why some people don't remember seeing it. They waived it and shortened it to 5 days. They allowed us not to post it in newspapers, and we could just post it in social media. That's expired at this point, unless you're still in California or something, you're still under COVID protocols to some degree. So we had to go back to the 30-day public comment period. We could extend that out to more time, but we're already under a lot of constraints to try to get these, from the time we get proposals and the time we actually approve them for mayor and council. We try to make that as efficient as possible. And early on, we got complaints from the nonprofits because that time period was too long. We tried to accommodate HUD too much, and we weren't as efficient. And so they were waiting around. They would apply in November, and it would take forever to get the funds. So we tried to reduce the number of times we had to go back to mayor and council and committee. And this is the first year we've ever received really any public comments. We've been doing the process to Stephanie's question for 10 years now. So this is the first time we've ever really received any public comments that pertain to the decision. We get general inquiries and things like that, but nothing related to the decision. So we had no reason to really adjust that in the last 10 years. That was a long answer.
Councilmember Morthland.
The Community Development Block Grant, my understanding, was originally designed to benefit a community of need, especially for low and moderate income residents. There was no good answer to the request for funding, as all applicants were very worthy. This was an extremely difficult decision. It kept me awake most nights as I wrestled with the decision. Ultimately, replacing galvanized steel and multiple asbestos concrete water lines while adding fire hydrants and drastically improving water pressure is the decision I felt gave this community of need an improved basic human right of clean and reliable water. That's the reason that I'm supporting this.
Thank you, Councilmember Morthland. Any other comments from council? Questions? Let me say that before calling for a vote, that I think the council and this mayor are certainly aware that this is not a politically popular thing to do, and that it will garner no votes for this council or mayor. It will create votes against them, and they're not doing it because they don't love our great nonprofits and charities of the city. They're doing it because they believe they are fulfilling the obligation of the CDBG as that they have, as it is prescribed, and that is really the mission, as Christine brilliantly echoed, the oath of the office, and that is what I think this council is trying to live up to. And it's again, and I would suggest to anybody that's listening or watches this that please go to our charities locally and support them. I'd say go to their websites, go to the website of Star House, support them tonight financially, Drake House, Homestretch, RDOC, the North Fulton Charities, CDA. I mean, they're all outstanding organizations, and I know that this myself, and I know this council would welcome and relish the opportunities to go spend time at each of these organizations to support them and to help raise funds for them, because I know everybody on this council believes in those organizations, and that this CDBG grant, although historically there has been money appropriated to nonprofits, it was the understanding of this council that that was not the intent of the CDBG funds and therefore was not prescribed in the same manner. So I hope that everyone will take that in the spirit that it's meant. And with that being said, Councilmember Hills, do you have a motion?
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. I do. I move to approve the resolution to accept the 2022 Community Development Block Grant, also known as CDBG, allocations and budget amendment 225-70101-05-23-22 in the amount of $450,000.
Thank you, Councilmember Hills. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Palermo. All those in favor of the approval of the resolution, please raise your hands. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Next is the Community Development Department. Councilmember Palermo, will you read the Community Development item?
Item number 2, approval of a text amendment to the Unified Development Code to Article 14, definitions, Section 14.2, defined terms. This is the second reading.
City Attorney Davidson, would you please read the ordinance?
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ordinance to amend the Unified Development Code by modifying Article 14, Section 14.2, defined terms. Now therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell, Georgia, pursuant to their authority, do hereby amend Article 14, definitions of the Unified Development Code, the text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this would be the second reading.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. Council, questions or comments on the matter? No comments or questions on the matter from the council. Any questions or comments from the public? No questions or comments from the public. Council, I bring it back to you. Councilmember Palermo.
Mr. Gaines, yeah, I'd love for you to kind of walk us through a little more, just give it a little more perspective.
Very well, thank you, Councilman, and good evening, Mayor and full council. As stated, this is the second reading for this proposed amendment to Article 14 of the Unified Development Code, in Section 14.2, adding defined terms for apartment, unit, and condominium. Just a quick timeline, this process was initiated by the Mayor and Council in mid-March, had a public hearing with the Planning Commission in April, and had its first read here with this body earlier this month. These are the terms in question. Currently, our Unified Development Code defines multi-family units, and the charge here was to break that term down into distinctions of units intended for rental and units intended for sale. So apartment, unit, and condominium. You'll see unit stricken here, and the reason being is that we are slightly modifying our recommendation to staff to convert that term to just apartment as opposed to apartment unit. That's more in alignment with our sister cities here in North Fulton. The terms and their definitions were actually borrowed from the city of Marietta's zoning ordinance, and they use the term apartment unit, but they also have another term for apartment house as well, so they have a little bit more distinction in theirs. So we just are proposing to use the term apartment as opposed to apartment unit, and then condominium as indicated on the slide. Okay. Back in April, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the text amendment as was initiated, and of course this body earlier this month approved the same. Staff recommends, as I stated, the approval of this reading with the slight revision to the term for apartment and strictly using the word apartment and deleting the word unit. And for any questions, there are any.
Thank you, Mr. Gaines. Councilmember Palermo, my apologies there for jumping the gun on you. Would you like to lead us off with any comments?
So I have no comments. This is, this is really just adding some definitions, so this is having no impact to the code, to anything at all. This is just adding some additional terms and definitions within the code that, of course, can be added or used in other updates. With that, Mayor Wilson, I'd even though again I don't picture much discussion, but I'd appreciate it if you would open it up again to the public in case there are any questions or comments on Mr. Gaines's beautiful slides here.
I will. Let me make sure the rest of the council doesn't have any questions or comments on the matter. All right, with that being said, I'll leave it to the very large gallery that still remains. If there's any questions or comments from the public. That being said, that there's no questions or comments from the public at this matter, I'll bring it back to council for any further additional comments or questions on the matter. That being said, Councilmember Palermo, do you have a motion?
Motion to approve this second reading with staff's recommendation.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Mortland. All those in favor of the approval of text amendment to the UDC, please raise your hands. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Gaines. Next is the Finance Department. Councilmember Hall, will you read the finance item?
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 3, approval to retire outstanding debt for the purchase of Mimosa Hall and property at Chafin Road, and approval of Budget Amendment 1006-1101-05-2322 in the amount of $3,200,000, presented by our Director of Finance, Ryan Luckett.
Good evening again, everyone. This is the item that was referenced in the budget discussion earlier, and this is the formal approval of that. Just to give you some background, this kind of came out of the budget discussion process and the effort to identify resources for operating enhancements. And one idea was to use some general fund balance in excess of reserves to retire outstanding debt. This is the table that we discussed at the last committee meeting that shows you all of the various loans or debt, outstanding debt funded by general fund resources. This includes the Chafin Road property, Mimosa Hall, 7 Branches property, road resurfacing catch-up, and there's a series of various equipment leases, mainly related to the fire department, fire trucks, and some IT equipment as well. So total outstanding debt as of the end of this fiscal year, $15.9 million, with annual debt service of $2.8 million. 2 loans were identified for potential repayment. This includes the Chafin Road property and Mimosa Hall. These 2 were identified primarily because of their one-time nature, in terms of, this is an equipment that we would continue to finance in the future. The FY23 budget does assume this debt payoff, and the budget redirects that $700,000 from debt service to other operating enhancements. By paying off these 2 loans, the city would also save a net of $147,000 in interest expense. And as we discussed at committee, there is a prepayment penalty associated with the Chafin Road property. Initially, that was at 1%, which was about $15,000, and after discussions with the bank, they were willing to lower that to 0.5%. So it was about $7,200. Outstanding principal for these 2 identified loans is approximately $3.2 million. In terms of available funding to fund the payoff, we have identified our local option sales tax revenue in the general fund for FY22. You can see our revised budget for 22 is $26.65 million. We're estimating to bring in about $30 million, which leaves about $3.35 million extra above what was budgeted. And so the recommendation would be to retire the debt associated with Mimosa Hall and Chafin Road, and we're also asking for approval of a budget amendment to recognize this extra revenue and to appropriate those funds for the actual payoff of these 2 loans. If the mayor and council chooses not to move forward with this, we would just need to go back and make adjustments to the proposed budget to add back the annual debt service for these 2 loans. So I'll be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Council have any questions for Mr. Luckett? Councilmember Palermo?
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. So I was hesitant of paying off this debt at first, but now knowing there's a budget that shows for the first time since 2018, this mayor and council, the city of Roswell, will not be raising taxes on its residents. Given that, I certainly will support paying off this debt in addition to not raising taxes. So I will be supporting this tonight.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Any other thoughts or questions? Councilmember Vanstrom.
Yeah, I want to thank Ryan. I did get a chance to sit down with him and review all of this. I had a few questions from the last committee meeting, and those have been answered, and I too will support this.
Thank you, Councilmember Vanstrom. Any other thoughts or questions from council? Questions or comments from the public? With no questions or comments from the public, bring it back to council. Any additional thoughts or questions from the council? With that being said, Councilmember Hall, do you have a motion?
Yes, sir. Motion to approve item number 3, approval to retire the outstanding debt for the purchase of Mimosa Hall and property at Chafin Road.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Mortland. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Next is the Recreation Parks Next is Recreation Parks, Historic and Cultural Affairs Department. Councilmember Morthland, will you please read the first recreation and park item?
Item number 4, approval of the proposed additional language to the Historic Assets Rental Program Policy, presented by Ms. Dina Bush and Jeff Leatherman.
I'm going to take this one on, and I just want to acknowledge our Historic Asset Manager, Dina Bush, who's behind me, as well as Deputy Director Malone, who's here tonight. Just truly outstanding individuals that continue to manage and work on our historic assets along with other projects, and couldn't be more proud of the work that they're doing. I'm going to save the PowerPoint presentation and just reference packet page 83. At committee meeting, we had discussed essentially staff's recommendation to have some flexibility within our already approved fee schedule that would give us the ability to negotiate contracts and rental fees for multiple day contracts. At that committee meeting, there was a request that, as opposed to in coordination with the city administrator, that we strike that and include an approval from the city administrator in order to move that forward. Just want to point out that we have made that change to the final packet. Again, page 83. For your reference, and we recommend approval of that newly added language into our historic asset fee schedule for your consideration tonight.
Jeff, what about page 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, and 82? Are you not going to reference those as well?
I am not sure about those pages, but if they're highlighted in yellow and they say you, I would say yes.
Outstanding. Thanks, Jeff. Comments or questions from council? Councilmember Hills.
Thank you, Mr. Leatherman. I just want to say that I appreciate Roswell Rec Parks, Cultural Department, what is it called? Cultural Assets? No.
And Historic Affairs, too.
And Historic Affairs. The direction that you all are heading of just buttoning up some loose ends and making sure that things are taken care of, having special events and event planning background. I will say the latitude that we are about to, I hope, extend to you to negotiate is really important in attracting and retaining repeat customers. And that may be a resident, it may be somebody from the outside, but I think this is a great idea, a step in the right direction, and I support the way that you're going about handling that. Thank you, and thank you, Dina.
Thank you, Councilmember Hills. Any other additional comments or questions from council? That being said, any comments from the public? That being none, any additional comments or questions from council? Thank you very much. Councilmember Morthland, do you have a motion?
Motion to approve the proposed additional language to the Historic Assets Rental Program Policy.
Thank you, Councilmember Morthland. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Hills. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Councilmember Morthland, will you read the second recreation and park item, please, sir?
Number 5, approval of the River Parks Master Plan Addendum and approval to authorize the mayor and/or city administrator to execute a task order with Star White House for $114,544.75 to perform a comprehensive engineering analysis regarding the feasibility and potential benefits of maintenance dredging at the Ace Sands location, provide technical analysis and evaluation support during the solicitation of potential maintenance dredgers, provide site impacts and design, and provide stakeholder and regulatory coordination and community engagement for the process. Director Leatherman.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Morthland. Just want to walk the mayor and council through. This is an element of the mayor and the council's 100-day plan that we're bringing forward, as well as Councilmember Morthland just read into the record, a request for an additional task order that we discussed in committee in April. Just going to run through a couple of slides very quickly. We've talked about them at length at council, but just in case there's community members that may not have heard some of the background, want to run through that. And just from an overall perspective, we are looking at Roswell's portion of the Chattahoochee River. 2016, we approved the River Park Master Plan. It does include some elements of Girard Landing, which you'll see all the way kind of at the bottom right-hand corner, stretches through the kind of main portion of the Chattahoochee River Parks and down to Willio at the county line. We're focusing with this addendum really around two key areas of the River Parks Master Plan. And what we've put forward is, in discussions with this council in the first 100 days, a direction for what are we going to do about erosion and dredging along the Chattahoochee River. The intent of the addendum is to memorialize those priorities and then identify where we're headed into the future, not only with this addendum, but also with your proposed budget that was read into the reading earlier tonight. And just to put it in perspective, this was just the 18th, a couple of days ago. And as you'll see in these photos, this is what we're starting to see materialize in different sections of the Chattahoochee River, all the way to the point where we're creating beaches. And we're seeing those starting to manifest themselves in different ways. And this mayor and council has identified that this is a problem that we need to identify, that we need to address, and we need to strategize on, not only from the city, but also from a regional basis. And before we go into the investment of ASAN Phase 1 and 2, which you see blue line and red line, I know we've talked a lot about these maps. Really, the intent is $6.2 million is a significant amount of taxpayer money. We want to make sure that we're not trapping ourselves into a place where we can't facilitate maintenance, dredging, mining, and tackling the problem of silt and sedimentation on the river. And that is what the council has looked at in this proposal, is everything to the left of the red line there on the map is reserving that space for a conversation about operational dredging on the Chattahoochee River. And then looking at the feasibility associated with that, and then moving forward with our park design in accordance and in conjunction with that operation. Again, as we talked about, the priority for what we're asking for in the task order change is looking at the feasibility, understanding and mitigating the flood risk, protecting recreational values, developing the first right of refusal for any of the material that may be usable in that property, minimizing the impacts on the parks and surrounding community also will be a component of that work. We're also looking at the narrative reports, recommendations, conceptual design, and the impacts associated with Phase 2, and doing that here this summer as we're working our way through the permitting process of the design of ASAN Phase 1 and 2, both concluding in September before we initiate and finalize our contract proposals and actually initiate construction on and around that same time. Priority 1B then starts to look at if we displace the building space that was there, again, left of the blue line on my previous map, what happens to that building? We want to know that we want to be able to have opportunities for restaurants, cafes, multi-purpose space somewhere along the river. We hear that demand from our community. If we displace it out of the ASAN property, we want to look at the Don White Park location as well as the Azalea Park location for alternatives to the original master plan. This addendum also identifies those two areas in our strategy moving forward. This is a summary of those kind of three strategies put together alongside of Riverside Park schematic design, making sure that our infrastructure is all working together as we invest along the river for its future. Our two recommendations is adopting the addendum, which is outlined in your report, and additionally, staff recommends the authorization for mayor or city council or city administrator to approve the task order with Star White House for dredging and feasibility. As a reminder from our April meeting, we moved money from our facility condition assessment, which was covered in our 5-year Parks Master Plan. We had some additional revenue left over, moved that line item to fund this, so this isn't a funding issue. This is a contract authorization that we need in order to move forward with that additional task order. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or review any of the items that I went over quickly. I realize that.
Jeff, just a quick statement. One, thank you. Thank you for your hard work on this. And my statement to you is I'm glad we've got you as a significant part of our team leading the charge on this. I think your leadership has been fantastic. Thank you, Councilmember Morthland, for your leadership on this. And I'm going to, if I sound patronizing, forgive me. I am so proud of the work you guys are doing on this. It is hard to state. We could talk about this for hours. This is not very sexy to talk about, but boy, is it sexy. And it is sexy because of the leadership and the courage that this council and the leadership of the staff and the courage of the staff to take this on. It doesn't sound like much, but it's a big deal. There's a reason this city has got out of the dredging business 12 years ago. It's easy to forget about, and it's tough to engage in, and the consequences of not doing it are gigantic. And even more so, this council has had the wherewithal and wisdom to not simply jump on the river master plan without figuring out that dredging had to be part of the solution. And there's a reason why it hasn't been figured out before. It's hard stuff. And you guys have really gotten into this and tackled it, and it's realistic, and we're going to get it done. And I'm really impressed. And so forgive me if it sounds patronizing, but I'm really impressed and proud of the work you guys have done. So thank you.
Thank you.
Questions or comments from staff or council? Forgive me. With no comments or questions from council, public comment. With no public comment, I bring it back to council. No comments or questions from council. At this point, I ask Councilmember Northland, do you have a motion?
Motion to approve number 5, the River Parks Master Plan Addendum and approval to authorize the mayor and/or city administrator to execute a task order with Star White House. Keep going?
Keep going, baby.
Keep going, all right. For $114,544.75 to perform a comprehensive engineering analysis regarding the feasibility and potential benefits of maintenance dredging at the Ace Sands location, provide technical analysis and evaluation support during the solicitation of potential maintenance dredgers, provide site impacts and design, and provide stakeholder and regulatory coordination and community engagement for the process.
Will, I'm almost tempted to make you read it again, but you did that well. Thank you for the motion, Councilmember Worthlin. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Hills. All those in favor of approval of this plan, please raise your hands. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much. We'll now go to the city attorney's report. Mr. Davidson, would you please read the first item on your report?
Thank you, Mayor. The first item I have is approval of a resolution to become a member of the Georgia Interlocal Risk Management Agency, which is GIRMA, and authorize the mayor and/or city administrator to sign all necessary documents in order to become a member and obtain the insurance that y'all have already approved through GIRMA.
Thank you, sir. Any council, any questions or comments for Mr. Davidson? To the hundreds of people still in the audience, any comments? That being no comments from the public, council, any additional comments or questions? If not, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by
Number
Mr.
6 on the attorney's report.
Thank you, Mr. Vanstrom. Councilmember Vanstrom, do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Mortland. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. David, please read the next item on your report.
Thank you. The next item I have is approval of a resolution to extend the temporary moratorium on the acceptance of ground sign permit applications for all properties within the city of Roswell in order to update the city of Roswell sign ordinance. The sign ordinance draft is complete. It is on committee for tomorrow. This just will allow the city time to go through the process of approving the sign ordinance with the changes.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. Any questions or comments from council? Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. Just a quick question. How long is the extension?
It's 120 days or until the ordinance is approved, whichever is first.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Any other questions or comments from council? That being said, any public comment? Being no public comment, any other additional questions or comment from the council? Being no questions or comments from the council, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve city attorney's report, item 7.
Thank you, Councilmember Vanstrom. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Hill. I have a second. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. At this time, I have a recommendation for closure to discuss personnel litigation and real estate. Do I have a motion? Motion by Councilmember Vanstrom. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Mortland. All those in favor of going to closure, please raise your hands. We go to closure, and it's unanimous. Thank you very much.